Good morning, everyone. I'll try it one more time. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody here. Welcome to our statewide Child Care Summit here in Dayton, Ohio. I'm Chris Kirshner, President and CEO of the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started today, I really just want to take a moment and relay the thoughts, prayers of the Dayton area business community for the lives lost in Washington, D.C. last night. We're an aviation community, we are a military community, and when these tragedies happen, it strikes home, especially when it's with a hometown airline like PSA Airlines. So our thoughts are with the crew members, the families, the victims, and the military that all lost their lives or were injured in this tragedy. So please take a moment of silence for them. Thank you. Like I said, welcome to our Child Care Summit. We're excited to be here. We're excited to bring attention on this critical issue for our business community and for our employers. I first want to thank Groundwork Ohio, Preschool Promise, Wright State University for your partnership in helping put together this statewide conference right here in Dayton, Ohio. Childcare has become a critical business issue. It's not just access to childcare, it's the cost of childcare, and it's the quality of the childcare. If a parent is forced to choose between their job and a child, the child will win every single time, and I don't blame them. But we can help. We can help by using our tools and our influence to not put parents in the position to have to make that choice. Let's look at the data for a second. Last year, there was an economic impact study that came out from the Groundwork Ohio, the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, looking at the real impact on employers. 48% of small business owners cite lack of childcare options as directly affecting their ability to recruit and retain employees. 800,000 Ohio workers have cut back their hours and their productivity due to childcare barriers. And 60% of parents say lack of childcare is their reason for leaving the workforce. Now, fast forwarding to the job openings we have in Ohio today. And Governor DeWine, who's here with us, knows these numbers very well. Ohio has 272,000 job openings right now today. And if we have 800,000 people who are cutting back their hours or are leaving the workforce because of childcare issues, we could significantly address our workforce issue in the state if we can solve this challenge. But it can't be done alone. It has to be done through partnerships, through the private sector, through the businesses that we represent, and through our public sector and nonprofit friends. We have to do it together. Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce Vice President Stephanie Kyneth and I were at the State House this past Tuesday with chamber colleagues from across the state, meeting with the Ohio Speaker of the House, the Director of Job and Family Services, and the legislature to identify creative solutions to mitigate the risk for the business community, incentivize business investments in childcare, and ensure there is access to childcare for everyone. Let me be clear, this is not easy, and this is new territory for a lot of businesses and business organizations. But we know that identifying solutions to the childcare crisis will have a direct impact on our workforce and the future of the state of Ohio. That's why all of us are taking it so seriously. That's why the governor carved time out of his schedule to be here with us today. As I close, I just want to thank Groundwork Ohio, Preschool Promise, and Wright State University for the tremendous partnership. And it is now my pleasure to introduce a close friend, partner, and business leader that is helping us address these workforce issues. Marty Grunder has been the owner of Grunder Landscaping, headquartered in Miamisburg, for over 40 years. He's the owner of the Grow Group for over 30 years. And he is the current Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Trustees member and chair of our Public Policy and Advocacy Committee on our executive committee at the Chamber. It's now my pleasure to introduce my friend, Marty Grunder.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Preschool Promise, for the support today. This is a wonderful opportunity for me, and I want to recognize my friend, President Sue Edwards, down here in the front row. As I recently completed my term as a trustee here at Wright State University, you're to be commended for all the good work that you've done out here, providing an opportunity for higher education for a lot of people. Congratulations. We're honored to have our esteemed governor with us here this morning. He began an impressive political career as a prosecutor right here in Greene County after serving in Ohio Senate and House of Representatives, and then as lieutenant governor, a United States senator, and as Ohio Attorney General. He began his term of governor in 2019. While his list of elected positions is impressive, I am most impressed by his work as a father and a grandfather. The governor has made his commitment to support business, young children, and families a priority in every position he has held. I began Grunder Landscaping Company back in 1984 with a $25 lawnmower bought at a garage sale, and I ran that business from my dorm room at the University of Dayton and gave my poor mother, a teacher herself, quite a few gray hairs. After my graduation from the University of Dayton, my business started to grow, and I started hiring people to keep up with the demand. Ever since my first hire, I have understood that your external customer service will never exceed your internal customer service. What the bottom line is, folks, if you want your team to treat your clients well, you got to treat your team well. And I know that they have lives outside of work, they have children and families that they are concerned about each and every day. I had a front row seat to understand the importance of early childhood education because of my late mother's 45-year teaching career right around the corner from here in Mad River Local Schools. And my wife's work, Lisa, who's seated in the front row here with me, she's a recently retired kindergarten teacher from Incarnation School in Centerville. So through osmosis, if you will, I've learned to understand a lot of these challenges. So I am very pleased to introduce Governor DeWine and continuing to live out his commitment to young people by helping us as businesses make child care more accessible for our employees. We all win when our young children are being well cared for and educated, and our employees are able to show up every day at work helping our businesses thrive. Please join me in welcoming Governor Mike DeWine.
Marty, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. See you all. One of the first things I did after I took office as governor is I called Marty and said, help. We need help at Wright State. And he actually answered the call, and the rest is history. So Wright State is doing well. And President, thank you for your great work. We appreciate it very much. It helps having trustees who really pull, trustees who understand the world that we live in today and how important Wright State is to not only the Miami Valley, but frankly to the whole state of Ohio. So we appreciate you hosting us here today. Thanks everybody for being here. Very, very important topic, child care. But before I get into child care, I want to maybe kind of set the stage and look at this. As I look at things, Marty indicated, I look at things as a governor. I also look at things as a parent, grandparent, now great-grandparent. And so those two, really are not in conflict. In fact, when we look at where the state is, those two are really kind of come together. And let me just explain what I mean. Ohio's doing well. We are bringing businesses in. We're bringing businesses that are businesses of the future in. That's occurring in Dayton. It's occurring in the Miami Valley. Chris, thank you for the work that you do and everyone else in the community. This is a community that is, I think, really on the move, and the state's on the move. The biggest question we always get when we compete with other states about businesses, and we're competing very, very well. This is, frankly, the Midwest's time in history. It's our time in history. We've got so many things going for us. We've got a great business climate. Our taxes are reasonable and predictable. We have water. We have the electricity. We have the work. We have people who want to work. It's our culture. But the big question always is when companies want to look to come here, depending on no matter what the company is, they look at what their workforce needs are. And that's always a question. It may be something as high up as Sherwin-Williams when we were keeping them in the state of Ohio, and we did successfully. That was a struggle, it was a battle, but it worked. Their final question was, how many PhDs in chemistry are we graduating every year? It can be all kinds of different things, but we have to meet those workforce needs. To do that, we want every child to live up to their God-given potential and every Ohioan to live up to their God-given potential. We can't waste people in a sense. That's the same thing we want as parents. That's the same thing we want as grandparents. What do you want for your grandkids? What do you want for your kids? You want them to live up to their full potential. You want them to be able to dream whatever they can dream and then try to fulfill that. And we know to do that, we have to give them the tools. And we know it is education. It's an early childhood education. We're going to present a budget on Monday. And I'm not going to get into the details about the budget today. We'll do that on Monday. But it is going to be a budget similar, frankly, to our last 3 budgets. This will be my final budget as governor. It's a budget that focuses on our people. It's investing in our people. Woody Hayes used to say, you win with people. Yeah, you win with people. And that's what this game is all about. And that's our biggest challenge in Ohio, is to make sure everybody lives up to that full potential. Child care obviously fits into that. Excuse me, quality child care. Quality child care does 2 things. It helps that child grow. It helps that child mature. It helps that child get ready for kindergarten. It helps that child move forward. And at the same time, it helps the parent, so a parent can go to work, have confidence that their child is being taken care of, focus on their work, and know that child is in good hands until they pick that child up that night. So child care is just absolutely essential. I took office in 2019. We have been able, in increments, to expand people who are eligible for state-supported child care. When I took office, we were the state was covering up to 130% of the federal poverty level for working families. Today, we have been able to take that up to 200% of the poverty level, and we're doing that now, including our new Child Care Choice Voucher Program. It means a working family of 4 can now make $62,000 a year and still receive some support. We're now 8 months actually into this voucher program. We're already serving 4,300 more families, including 6,400 more children. Thousands of parents can now take a new job, take on more hours, or even go back to school if they chose to. In a recent survey, we asked parents how this program has impacted their families. And I'll just share with you what some of the answers were out of this expansion that we have done. 85% said, quote, it helps them at school or work to work longer hours or more often. 60% answered, I worry less about my child's safety when I'm not with them. More than half answered, these programs better prepare my child for school. Others shared comments like, it is life-changing. It allows me to help produce income to feed my children, make sure they're clothed and housed. This program is a blessing to Ohio families. Another person, if it weren't for this program, my child care costs would be over half of my income monthly. So the program is making a real impact. We've also done some other things. set aside $85 million in our Child Care Access Grant Program to build new child care sites across the state of Ohio. We dedicated another $30 million to provide quality child care specifically for infants and toddlers, targeted to help communities with high infant mortality rates. Those two relate, obviously. $5 million to support training for early care and education for teachers to use the science of reading to help their students learn to love books. The science of reading, as you know, is something that we have taken on across the state of Ohio. So it's not just in our K through 12, but it's also, we're pushing that into our quality child care. Again, quality child care with the emphasis on quality is really, really the key. We know, though, and the truth is that as I look at the budget, as I've been looking at it for the last few weeks very intensely, we cannot do this alone. The state cannot do this alone. I want to encourage the business community to continue to get involved. I think it is good business. I think it is the logical thing to do. Last year, for example, we took a major step forward, a new program. Our new Department of Children and Youth, and Kara, who heads it up. Kara, stand up. And let me just say, Kara's doing a great job, and we created this new department because, frankly, I want someone who wakes up every morning and all they're thinking about is kids. It's important, and we pulled from 5 or 6 other departments, took people out of these departments, focused this department on children. I wish we'd done it earlier. But we've done it, and we've seen just amazing results. We're looking at things, frankly, differently. People who've been pulled into this department now are focused on kids and not on a number of other different things. And so the focus, I always believe that you need people who have a focus on something every single day. Nothing more important than our kids. So as I said, we took a major step. This new department that we have created launched phase 1 of a public-private partnership program. It's designed to help business support their employees' most pressing child care needs. And here's how it works. Participating businesses work with a local nonprofit or a government partner to identify where their teams are struggling with child care. For example, maybe their employees need child care during evenings or on weekends. But whatever it is, under this program, the Business Partners Organization identifies child care providers that can meet their needs and work with the business to identify any other obstacles that are being faced. From there, the business can determine what level of financial support they are able to provide. Then the state picks up the rest of the cost through grant funding. Phase 1 of this program, we started with Montgomery County as well as Hamilton, Franklin, Licking, and Cuyahoga counties. We're working this year and hope to make this available to all 88 counties statewide. But we do have to have, obviously, business participation, so I would just encourage you to take a look at this. If you have any questions, ask Kara, and she can tell you how this works. We think it's a win-win. Let me now turn, though, back for just a moment to the budget. As I said, we're in the process of finishing up our executive budget, and we'll get the specifics out on Monday. As we look at this, our emphasis is on families. You're going to see some things in there that we've not seen before to support Ohio working families. This is truly, truly our key, and I know I said it a moment ago, but without the support of families and giving them the help and support that they need, we are not going to be able to advance as a state. We all know the importance of families in our own lives. We know the importance of families in our culture. Even beyond that, though, the progress of this state depends on how much we are able to support these families. As we make decisions about priorities, I think we have to continue to focus on these children, focus on these families, and give them the support that they need. As we compete with other states, we are now in a very, very good position in regard to where we stand in business climate. And that business climate certainly includes where we stand in regard to taxes. We are a very competitive state. Do not let anybody tell you that we are not. We made significant cuts, but we're now to a point where we're not. As we talk to businesses, in the time that I have been governor, I've not had one business that said to me, we can't come to Ohio because your taxes are too high. So let me just make that very, very clear. We are now very competitive. Now we have to continue to push to invest in our people. Let me thank the members of the General Assembly. Andrea White has been a great leader in this. Senator Blackshear, Desiree Timms, all the members of the General Assembly. This has been a kind of a bipartisan issue as far as investing in people. Sometimes the media talks about the differences I might have with the state legislature, and we, like all things, we do have some differences. My wife points out that she doesn't always agree with me either on things. But let me say that when we talk about the budget and the three budgets I presented, and when we tried to really ratchet up our investment in people, this legislature has said yes. And so we would ask you, work with your legislators over the next few months on the focus of child care. Work with the legislators in the focus in regard to supporting families. We need your help. Members of the legislature, I think, have an open ear for that. I think they're sympathetic, but it always helps. It always helps when someone from your district, I can tell you this from my 22 years as a legislator and congressman and senator, it always helps when people from your district come and see you and say, look, this is really, really important. Let me tell you how it impacts my business. Let me tell you how it impacts my life. Let me tell you how it affects our community. So I know the call to action I see on the agenda is at 11:45 or something. Well, this is my first call to action. We ask you to help us talk with the legislature and explain the importance of those things. If we do this, we'll help ensure that more of our children reach their full potential, while at the same time, more of our parents are empowered to contribute to Ohio's thriving economy for years to come. This is a bright time in Ohio. It is truly a rising sun, but we have to invest in our people. We have to help our families move forward, and because they're the essential part of making this happen. So I wish you all a good day. You've got a lot of speakers, I see, a good agenda, and I see Vicky's getting ready to get the hook and pull me off here. Hi, Vicky. How are you? Thanks, everybody.
I would never give you the hook, ever, because I don't know about you all, but I've been working in child health policy for the last 30 years, and I am so proud to say that Mike DeWine is our governor because he's a governor for kids. And that doesn't mean that I don't call him out and say, hey, we got to do more, right, Governor? That's right. About every week, yeah. But what I think he mentioned, one of the most amazing things that has happened during his 6 years as governor, and that is the creation of the Department of Children and Youth. Having that department focused on those issues has really enabled us to move quickly. So Director Wente, Deputy Director Van Dusen, thank you both for being here today and for investing in our kids. It is the only way that we are going to make sure that Ohio kids grow, thrive, and succeed is if we all work together. And we have a lot of policymakers who are here today who are doing that great work. I think I saw Senator Blackshear. I know Representative White and Representative Timms were going to be here. But we also have county commissioners. Can I ask you all to stand, please? All of our elected officials. We have mayors, we have city council members, We have school board members. We have folks who are leaders in their communities, making an impact for kids, and thank you so much for investing your time with us today. So, I'm Vicki Jambrone, for those of you that I don't know, and I work in public policy around kids and health issues, and I happen to have the great privilege to be on the planning committee. And we have put together a great lineup for you all, and we have a very dynamic committee, so I'm going to introduce them. So please stand when I introduce you. The great connector and catalyst for this entire thing is Barbara Mills, who astutely brought us all together to elevate this conversation. Stephanie Kyneth from the Dayton Chamber has been an amazing leader for us. Certainly President Sue Edwards, who's for agreeing to host us and adding to the content. Thank you so much. Debbie Lieberman and Amy Piner from Montgomery County. I know I saw Debbie, but I didn't see Amy. And from the groundwork team, we have Troy Hunter and Jacob Oates. And I think Jacob hurt his leg, so he couldn't be here today. And of course, our fearless leader in this work is someone I greatly admire, the Honorable Shannon Jones. And yes, she gets around. Shannon has been committed to using data to develop policy that matters for Ohio's youngest citizens her entire career. I worked with her on a booster seat bill back in the day when no one thought we could get it passed. She served as a state representative and a state senator, and she's the only woman in her party ever to be elected to the majority leadership team in both chambers, a first for Ohio's history. She's going to hate that I did that, just so you know. After leaving the General Assembly, she's continued her public service and advocacy as a Warren County Commissioner and also as serving as the president and CEO of Groundwork Ohio for 8 years. But now, she is the founder of On Key Strategies, where she's working with clients all across the country to unlock the transformative power of advocacy and communications. But most importantly, she is the ultimate advocate for Ohio's future. Shannon.
I'll slip her $20 afterwards. That was very kind, Vicki, but this is a labor of love by so many great partners. When people ask me around the country where I'm from, and I say the Dayton, Ohio area, and they kind of look at me like, where is that, and what is that? I'm like, it's the greatest place you ever want to be. The business community, the philanthropic community, the human services community, is by far one of the shining stars in Ohio. Really hard to follow a governor, by the way, so I'm going to do my best just to kind of level set for everyone and why this is really important that you're here today, why I'm so excited that you're talking about this issue, and really hoping to surface some solutions or provoke some conversation to help us get to some solutions. Childcare is a really challenging issue. There is not a single solution, and it's going to take all of us in support of the governor's budget, in support of what the feds have done to invest in this, and what a lot of local communities, including Montgomery County and the city of Dayton, have continued to do to support childcare. Little bit of history. A couple of years ago now, I reached out to Chris Kirschner and Stephanie Kyneth, and I reached out to Steve Stivers and Rick Carfagna at the Ohio Chamber, and I said, look, can we come together and work as a team and figure out how we can bring lift to this issue, how we can start talking about this issue, where we can find common ground. I've never seen two more enthusiastic partners. And from that work, we worked with the U.S. Chamber Foundation and the Bipartisan Policy Center and other states that were also trying to think about this. So last year, we had the chance to participate in the National Summit on Childcare in D.C., And that spurred a lot of thinking on our part. So how can we bring some of these great solutions that other communities are talking about and experimenting with, how can we bring them here to Ohio so we can solve some of our workforce challenges and be a partner to the economic development that is happening right here in Ohio that the governor talked about? So from that work, we then started a coalition. So on your tables, if you'd like to know more about the coalition, there's a QR code. We hope that you will join us in this effort. You've certainly heard the governor speak about it. But what I think is super interesting about this coalition is that you've got small business leaders represented. You have the Farm Bureau represented. You have the Ohio Business Roundtable, certainly the large metro chambers. It doesn't matter what your job is. If you have children, particularly young children, childcare is at the front. So I know Justin Barnes with the Ohio Chamber is here. Justin, will you stand up? There he is. This is not, yes, thank you. This work is ongoing for us, and the Ohio Chamber has really joined us in this effort. So, I like to just get to the point. As those of you who know me, I don't, mess around. So I'm really quickly going to just set the table here. Why are all these businesses talking about it? Why are you here wanting to learn more about childcare? It's really simple. Businesses need high-quality workforce, they need reliable workforce, and we hear every single day, Chris talked about this, people looking for workforce. So I want to share with you some data that was just released on Tuesday here in the state of Ohio. These are some updated economic numbers and what parents here in the state are telling us. So first of all, you need to know, Chris mentioned that there were 800,000 parents based on a survey that Groundwork did a couple of years ago. I'm here to tell you that nearly 5 out of 10 working parents with young children have cut back their work hours to care for their children. And the economic analysis that was done by Public Opinion Strategies equated that to 1 million people in the state of Ohio who have cut back their working hours because they have to take care of their young children. So Chris mentioned that 48% of small business owners say they see this as a huge challenge to their growth and sustainability. That 60% of parents are citing childcare as the reason they are leaving the workforce. The reason they are leaving the workforce. Why? Because childcare is super expensive. If you're a parent with a young child, you know how expensive it is. But I just want to give you this quick example. Infant child care in the state of Ohio costs on average $12,351, toddler $11,000, preschoolers almost $10,000. That's the average. I can tell you we hear from communities in Franklin County, Montgomery County, Hamilton County, Cuyahoga County that it's much higher than this. And it's really hard for working parents to be able to afford this. So if you are a single mom making $20 an hour, the first $9.62 of every hour of work before taxes goes to pay for your child care. Now, I'm not the brightest bulb in the chandelier, but once I pay my taxes and I try to pay my rent and I try to pay my utilities and I try to keep my car maintained or my public transportation, provide gas and food for my family, I can't make that work. So it is no surprise, should be no surprise that largely women, but not solely women, are cutting back their hours or they're leaving the workforce altogether. It's also hard to access. 60% of families who live in rural communities live in childcare deserts. So even if they had an unlimited pot of money, they can't access it. 30% of all Ohioans can't access it. So it's expensive and it's not easily accessible. So the child care crisis really impacts us all. We talk about it for families because families work in your business. And you know, that's, as the governor says, really the foundation of our communities and our state. But it's also a huge economic drain. So Ready Nation has done a lot of analysis nationally, but even specifically in the state of Ohio. And they said that Ohio loses right now about $3.9 billion per year because of the child care issues. So think about the economic impact of having people in the workforce, providing for their families, buying goods and services from our local small businesses. So here's some of the newer data I want to share with you quickly. What are working parents, also known as your employees, telling us about their situation? So 25% of parents say their work performance has declined due to childcare challenges. 24% say parents with young children say they refused a job opportunity, a promotion, or a job change because of childcare. Half of working parents with young children, so these are families in the state of Ohio with children in their home under the age of 6, say that over the last couple of months, this is just in the last couple of months, this is the fourth quarter of 2024, they've had to cut back on their workforce to care for their own children. More than 40% of parents of young children have had to call off or miss a shift at work because of childcare issues. And 1 out of 4 parents with young children say have had to leave the workforce because of an inability to find childcare. So, lots of reasons there. 68% of Ohio parents with children under 6 identify at least one of those reasons as a factor in their work lives. So 2/3 of your workforce that have at least one child in their home under the age of 6, they may also have older children, have said one of these factors is impacting them at work. And a full 30% say 2 to 3 of those factors are impacting them at work. So when we did a deeper dive with these families to try to understand their needs, they were asked, what would having access to childcare allow them to do? Resoundingly, overwhelmingly, there weren't even other words that really jumped out on the word cloud, was work. Not surprising, they were also asked those parents of young children that had childcare. What did they identify childcare allowed them to do? Is work. Seems really obvious, but this is why you all are here today, because it's a big, wicked problem. It's really expensive, it's hard to access, and we need more people talking about it, thinking about it, problem solving and public-private partnership together, because it's going to take all of us to solve this big, wicked challenge. This is, to me, the big takeaway. 61% of non-full-time working moms say they would go back to work or work more hours if they had access to quality, affordable childcare. So when you think about your workforce challenges, understand there are women who are living in our midst. They are already trained, they are already educated, they already have the skills to do the job, but they cannot get there because they cannot afford or cannot access childcare, and they want to work. So really, no wonder business leaders are here today talking about this issue. No wonder the governor is asking you to join him in this effort. And if you're interested in learning more, there's going to be a lot of great content today to learn alongside of. I know that Debbie Feldman is going to be sort of talking about this down the road, but use the QR code to find out more about the coalition and join us to keep this conversation going. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Shannon. Amazing data. Next up is one of our members of our committee, but also Stephanie Kyneth, who is the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. And two of her focus areas are really workforce and economic development. She's the chief lobbyist for the chamber, but she's a leader here, she's a leader in Columbus, she's a leader in Washington, D.C., and she's focused on those issues that impact our region's business. But I have to tell you, she is relentless at all levels on the business case for childcare. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and invite my panelists up here, and we'll do some introductions once they get up, but we'll have Caitlin Codella-Lowe with the Bipartisan Policy Center join us, Erin Merchant with the U.S. Chamber Foundation, Janetta King with Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Voices, and Bonnie Dowling with McKinsey & Company. And I've seen all of you from afar this morning, so welcome officially. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in Dayton for this incredible conversation. As you heard this morning from both the governor and Shannon, there's a lot to talk about, and I know each of you are leading this work in your spheres of influence, but just for the audience this morning, we really wanted to start our conversation with this panel as a way to focus on what's happening nationally. So each of these panelists today have a really national perspective, and so hopefully can shed a little light outside of Ohio and give us a little context for what's happening in other states and across the country. So I'm going to start just with asking each of the panelists to share a little bit about themselves and their organization and why, in particular, their organization is talking about childcare at this time. So Janetta, I'll start with you.
Great, thank you. Good morning. Janetta King with Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Voices. And we really have enjoyed being part of this community, the part of this coalition. And I'll tell you a little bit about why Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Voices cares about this work. My background is, while I'm working nationally now, I actually live in Ohio, did public policy at the state level for Governor Strickland in Ohio, so I had a great opportunity to work with many of you. And I'm so glad to be able to wear this hat and continue to do that important work for the state that I still live in. I actually came here from Marietta, so still very involved in Ohio. 10,000 Small Businesses Voices is the advocacy arm of Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program. It is a business education program for small businesses. We have 4 sites in Ohio where we deliver this free program to small businesses. In 2010, we launched in Cleveland. In 2019, we are now here in the Dayton area, partnering with Sinclair. We also are in Cincinnati, and we are in Columbus. That means we have over 1,000 small business owners who are alums of our Ohio programs alone. And so they are very concerned about this issue because these are small business owners who come into our program because they want to grow. They are growth-oriented businesses. And so we talk with them about what prevents them from growing. Workforce at the top of the list, specifically childcare at the top of the list. And before I yield my time, I want to give a quick shout out to our Dayton program. We have a couple of alums here who are also childcare providers. Small businesses are child care providers. And so that makes this work even more interesting to us so that we can support them in their growth to help solve this problem. We are offering another cohort of this free mini MBA to small businesses, 12 weeks this summer. Our registration has closed, but for those of you in the room, if you are interested, we would love to have you apply to participate and to join our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Janetta. I cannot recommend this program enough. I've spoken with some of the cohorts and really incredible small business leaders and owners who are part of this program. So see us if you want some more information. Caitlin, take it away.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having this, for hosting this. Thank you to Shannon. I remember several months ago, we were having a conversation about this in DC, and she was like, you know what would be great? Let's do this in Ohio. And thrilled to see this come to fruition. I'm Caitlin Cadello. I'm Managing Director of Human Capital at the Bipartisan Policy Center, which is a relatively new portfolio within BPC that focuses on human capital as a whole, everything from early childhood education, K-12, higher ed, workforce development, immigration, everything that you can imagine as to how it affects our ability to hire and retain talent in this country. And most previously, about 3 months ago to be exact, I was the Vice President of Policy and Programs at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So sitting next to my colleague here, we both have similar thoughts and perspectives on this issue. But the BPC really has a strong federal focus, and we do a bit of work with states, including Ohio, on the child care front, and understanding really the bed of innovation that is happening in the states on this issue and what could be learned from that in federal policy. And I have to say, being in Ohio is always exciting because there is so much to take from the great work that you guys are doing, and truly the solid coalition that you guys are building to talk about this in not only a bipartisan way, but talk about this in solutions forward.
Great, thank you, Caitlin. I will share with the audience, Caitlin receives the award for sort of the longest standing conversation we've been involved in around childcare. I actually participated with Linan, who you'll hear from later from Groundwork Ohio, over a decade ago, one of the initial conversations that Caitlin convened on behalf of the U.S. Chamber. The first time I really started hearing businesses talk about childcare. And so, Caitlin, we've been angling to get you to Dayton ever since then, so really thrilled to have you. Welcome. Aaron, please.
Definitely, thanks so much. Very excited to be here in Dayton. My name is Aaron Merchant. I'm the Executive Director of Policy and Programs for Early Childhood Education at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Most places I give a little explanation about who the U.S. Chamber is and what we do, but I feel like this group is probably up to speed on that. But I will say, and we'll talk about this more, that one of the #1 reasons that childcare has risen up our priority list so quickly is because we are responsive to our members, and we have heard from chambers, we have heard from businesses, whether it's Fortune 500 companies, whether it's childcare providers who are businesses in and of themselves, that this is a priority and that we have had a sort of, I was going to say perfect storm, an imperfect storm of rising costs, of, say, global pandemics, but also the realization that if you don't have this one thing right, nothing else can be built upon, right? And so at the U.S. Chamber and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, we are here to be a facilitator, we're here to be a resource, and very excited to talk to you on this panel, but also to talk with folks after today about different ways that we can approach childcare. I say it so much, I joke that I'm going to put it on a t-shirt, but it's a national crisis that's going to be solved with local solutions. And so excited to talk more about that today.
Aaron, thank you. We're so grateful for the partnership of the U.S. Chamber and all of this work from the very beginning. And last but not least, Bonnie, welcome. Thank you so much for traveling from Colorado. We were really fortunate to connect with our local Ohio-based McKinsey partners, and they said Bonnie is the person to talk to. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm really thrilled to be here. Yes, I do live in Colorado now, but before that, and before I was a McKinsey partner, I was actually a labor and delivery nurse at the Cleveland Clinic. So I do have some Ohio roots here, and I'm excited to be back. But I lead our talent service line at McKinsey. And while childcare has always been an issue, I think it really came to the forefront over COVID, when all of a sudden, everybody who has a young kid, show of hands, how many have children? Right. So over COVID, how'd that work for you? Right? We were working, we were teachers, we were childcare. It was a lot. And all of a sudden, when I was speaking to over 3,000 companies about how do you think about hybrid virtual working and what does that look like? And people kept saying, well, people are quitting. Everybody's quitting. We started looking at it more and more. And you know what one of the big drivers was? Childcare. How do we address it? So that has become increasingly important. We've done a ton of research on it, and I'm so excited to be here to share some of what we've learned about the solutions as well as the economic impact.
Great. Thank you, Bonnie. Well, let's dive right in. Caitlin, I'm going to come back to you. I really would like, if you're able to give as close a snapshot as you can of sort of what's happening from the federal policy landscape perspective.
Sure. I was joking when I looked at this question when we were flying up here from DC, and I was like, hope you have your safety belts on, because it's a rocky road. But, you know, that's how it is at the start of any new Congress. There's a lot of trying to figure out what the priorities are going to be. And we are doing that in a moment in time where the real wonks in DC like to say, the Super Bowl of tax year, which honestly, if you are a nerd, is going to be more exciting than the real Super Bowl, but I'm also a Bills fan, so it's maybe because of that. But truly, TCJA, or the Tax Jobs and Cuts Act, this is the moment, right? We have a deadline, and it is at the end of this year. And it either is reauthorized, it is reworked, or it goes away. And so we have a reconciliation package that is in front of us, and there is a lot of debate as to what goes into that or what comes out of that. And even in the last 2 weeks, as the new Congress has sort of commenced conversation around this, we have heard 50-page documents of things that are potentially out there on what could go in, couldn't go in. And, I think anyone would say take that with like a bag of salt, not just a grain of salt. But the one thing that has been talked about often, and certainly not just the start this year, it started, maybe a year, 2 ago, 3 ago, we started hearing a lot about thinking about how do you use the tax code to help with affordability. I will be the first to tell you, as a parent of 2 children, childcare age, affordability is a big problem. It's not the only problem. It doesn't solve the childcare crisis. Figuring out affordability is one piece of a 3-legged stool. But it's an important piece of that stool. And so understanding how the tax code fits into that is really important. We have CTC, the Child Tax Credit. We have CDCTC, the Child Independent Care Tax Credit. We have 45F, which if you are a business owner, you understand. And I'm sure Bonnie and Janetta? Both think about 45F often. 45F is an opportunity for the business community to get a tax credit for offering childcare solutions to parents. It is a very small tax credit. It's $150,000. If you're a company that is looking to offer these types of solutions, you are rolling your eyes because you know the cost of putting a center on the land that you own, which is also only a handful of companies own the land that they operate on. That's around somewhere between $10 and $20 million. So it's laughable to think that we're going to solve this crisis with a little carrot that's $150,000. But the idea is that also there is a lot that needs to be changed in how we think about solving this problem. 45F was sort of derived from maybe 25 years ago as an idea of how you might incentivize business to do this. And it was very limited in its scope. Put a center on the land that you own. Or work with a CCR&R to help connect, right? To help connect. It didn't innovate. It has not innovated. And there are very simple solutions to how you could rethink how companies operate now, which is in a virtual sense, right? If you are a hybrid work, you're going in 3 days a week, it doesn't make any sense to then go back to your office on Mondays and Fridays to drop your kid off, right? And so it's thinking about how do you use the system that surrounds not only a community, but also the childcare system, how do you use that to really figure out how to solve this problem as a business and give businesses the opportunities to not only see the return on investment, but help with the upfront costs that are associated with it. And we can.
I think that's great, and I think the sort of bottom line is it's complicated, but there's a lot that's happening. Bonnie, I saw you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things I hear a lot about, especially even in the past week, I would say, is, well, how do we get people back into the office, right? We want people to come back into the office more. You know a great way to get people to come back into your office? If I have to drop my kid off on the first floor, I will very easily take the elevator up to the 3rd floor and sit in my office during the day. And if you have extra room, because people are working hybrid virtual options, maybe there's room to put a child care facility on one of those floors. Not saying everyone needs to become a child care provider. Goodness knows that's not what many of us should do. But can we partner with child care providers, find the space, and does that help answer some of our other questions? And all of our research is showing, yes, it's going to help answer your question about talent attraction, about talent retention, about getting people to come back in person. There's a lot of benefits.
That's perfect. I want to keep actually rolling with that question, Bonnie. And all of the research that both you've done and sort of McKinsey has done broadly around recruitment and retention of talent. Can you talk a little bit more about how childcare plays a role in that?
Absolutely. It is a massive factor in both recruitment and retention. About 90% of new moms and new parents broadly say the ability to access and afford childcare is a primary decision maker in their ability to return to work. You heard a lot of stats a minute ago about how many under and unemployed individuals, parents, there are in the state of Ohio. So the percent of those that would return to the workforce if they had access to affordable childcare is enough to fill the shoe. So over 100,000 individuals could come back into the workforce. In this 14-county area around Dayton, there are 26,000 unfilled jobs today. That is projected to grow to 50,000 if we don't change things. Single biggest lever? Childcare. You see organizations that offer childcare not only attracting more talent, but retaining them. My favorite, it's not an Ohio-based company, I apologize, but Patagonia, they retain 100% of their new parents. There's basically no other company that can say that. Steamboat in Colorado started offering on-site childcare. 90% of new parents said they expected to still be working there the next year. Not only that, it doesn't just impact your ability to recruit talent into the workforce and retain them once they're there, it improves their productivity. To the tune of reduced absences by about 2 weeks a year per employee. 2 additional weeks of work. So there's really significant impact of figuring it out. Like I said, you don't need to offer childcare. You can partner with someone. You can offer subsidies. There's a million different ways. UPS has offered emergency childcare on site. They saw an increase in their retention of hourly shift workers from 69 to 96%. For most businesses, if they can increase their retention rate by 1 percentage point, it offsets the cost of offering childcare. Most businesses see a 90 to 400% ROI on childcare. And with that said, while I do have businesses ask about the ROI for childcare constantly, I do not have businesses ask about the ROI for parking lots or elevators or coffee machines, or even ping pong tables. And if you are a business and you need workers, you need childcare in the same way that you need any of those things, and arguably a lot more than ping pong tables.
Thank you, Bonnie. That's I just wanted to pause and let some of those numbers sink in. That's pretty staggering. Aaron, you mentioned in your sort of opening comments a little bit about what you're hearing from your members, which of course are all across the country. Can you talk a little bit about some of those conversations you're having with those business leaders?
Absolutely. As I manufacture my t-shirts, the other thing that I say all the time, Stephanie, is you don't need to be an expert in childcare, you just need to be friends with one, right? And that is one of the key things that I hear from individual businesses, from chambers of all sizes, is what we're hearing is we understand that childcare is an issue. We want to proactively be part of it, but it is complicated, it is intimidating, and it's honestly overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming for parents. I also have 2 kids at childcare age. It's overwhelming for businesses. And then it's, I think, especially challenging for businesses who maybe do not have an HQ or an office or our opening speaker who created the landscaping empire, right? Like that's a situation where it's like we need to do something about this, but we're not going to have on-site childcare. We're not going to have, and so to piggyback off of something the governor said, that is where the business community's voice as an advocate is so powerful, because when the business community says something is a priority, when the business community says something is essential to make sure that our communities thrive, it gets a lot of ears, right? And I think that the other really important, like very high level piece that I hear from businesses, from chambers, is they don't necessarily want to be solely responsible for. I have not heard a single business say, you know what I think the goal here should be, is that childcare is available exclusively through employers. What we're seeing is a short-term need and a desire for a long-term sustainable fix. And so in the short term, we're seeing a lot of businesses be like, okay, what can I do immediately to help alleviate some of this stress that that my current and potentially future workers are experiencing? But also, how can we play a role in creating something sustainable for the Dayton area, for Ohio? And so that's where I want to stress that for business leaders, for childcare advocates, for chambers, you don't even necessarily need to come up with the solution, but just keep beating that drum to say childcare is essential, childcare is important. What are we doing about it? And then in some cases, if you're talking to lawmakers, what are you guys doing? Like we'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this, but just making sure that it doesn't fade, right? Making sure that it doesn't become a secondary priority. And so what we're hearing from businesses is they understand childcare is an issue. They don't always know where to begin. But increasingly, and we're going to hear from some other folks representing state chambers, businesses and chambers they're diving deep. They're doing the work. You're going to hear from Charles on this next panel, who has become, he'll push back on this, but he's essentially become an expert in childcare policy over the last few years out of necessity. And he's going to come up on stage and say, I'm not an expert in childcare. But let me tell you, he has done the work. And that's what we're seeing from the business community, is that they're diving in, they're making connections, and they're acting as facilitators on these conversations.
Yeah, you hit on something really important there, Aaron, that I want to highlight, which is that the conversations we're having today and sort of the conversation we're having, every time we talk about childcare is really not this quick fix. While we're talking about some solutions that will help in the immediate, what we're really talking about is what are we doing around systems change? How are we changing the childcare system, both nationally and certainly in Ohio and locally? And so, the next panel will use some specific examples, but I think Aaron is exactly right. If you walk away with nothing else, we want you to know that your voice is absolutely critical as part of this conversation. Your voice as a business leader, as a public sector leader, as a not-for-profit leader. None of this is possible, each of us in our silos. It's absolutely critical that we're coming together to create that systems change. So thank you for highlighting that, Aaron. Janetta, and Aaron touched on this too, but you really represent a critical demographic in this conversation, which is the small business voice. And we at the Dayton Area Chamber, I know the Ohio Chamber probably echoes it, and the US Chamber, small businesses make up the majority of our members. And when we talk about some of these solutions, I feel instantly oh man, that is not possible. And so, can you talk a little bit about what are those unique challenges that your small businesses are sharing with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So our small businesses that we offer this program to, our alumni, they actually are probably, many of them are considered even micro businesses. The median number of workers that our small business owners have are about 15. So when you think about, throwing up a child care facility on site, I mean, they're just not going to be able to do that. So they do think about some of the solutions differently. And I would like to go ahead and just share a little bit about some of our data specifically from those very small businesses, because I think that, it continues to help us understand the why our folks are talking about this and why they're coming for solutions as well. So we have the 1,000 small business owners in Ohio, but across the country we have 15,000 small businesses. And so like you, we're able to survey them. Goldman Sachs loves data, so we are able to get that data and really keep a finger on the pulse of these very small businesses. Number one thing I think that we all have to appreciate is small businesses want to grow. I mean, they are right now looking for those opportunities to take their business to the next level. Number one barrier to that, workforce. And then within workforce, this childcare problem. So, the data is really clear, and I'll just share a couple of our data points, is that more than 50% say that where they live, our small business owners, where they live, there are not enough childcare programs that are high quality and affordable. More than a third say their employees have been forced to cut their work hours or forgo work entirely because of the cost of childcare. 38% say the lack of childcare is having a negative impact on their ability to grow. So if we want them to grow, we're going to have to figure this out. And 62% said that being able to offer some type of benefit would be helpful in them retaining and hiring new employees. And so that goes back to this tax credit opportunity. The fact that Congress already passed a tax credit for employers to help address this, but no one is using it, that's a problem. We also surveyed our small business owners and we said, there's this employer tax credit out there. How many of you are using it? We didn't even get to double digits. How many of you know about it? We didn't even get to double digits. And so I think that really is where our small business owners are wanting to tell their story. They're wanting to do this advocacy because we believe that elected officials, want to be partners here, and we have been so excited that the attention and that so many elected officials in the room and the governor are saying that they want to provide these solutions. And so we're encouraging our small business owners to get to the table because not all the solutions are going to be doable for them. But what would be successful for them? Maybe instead of building a facility, it's pulling together, increasing their purchasing power is something that they're very interested in. Giving feedback on how the tax code could help them in being able to offer this benefit. So we are now, as the governor said, trying to have the backs of our elected officials who are going out there and offering these solutions, and we want to tell our stories to be able to support them. And so that's a lot of the work that we're doing. We have this great data, we have great policy partners, now we're trying to take it to advocacy, and like it or not, small business owners are really compelling advocates. You look at the Gallup polls of any institution across the country, guess who's at the top? It's small business owners. So they're important thought leaders in this, and that's where we are going to be doing a lot of our work.
Thank you, Janetta. This next question I think is open to anybody on the panel who wants to talk about it, but what do you think the cost is if we do not get this right? What do you think the cost is if we are not able as a country, certainly as a state, to address this problem in our generation?
I'll start. I think we actually have a pretty good understanding of what the cost is, right? And part of that is our lived experience with it, right? We all had the joy of living through the last 5 years and understanding what it looks like when you do not have, right? Like when you are sitting on Zoom calls with your 6-month-old on your lap trying to figure out how to do all the things. It's very clear, not only to you as an employee, but to your employer, what this looks like. And I think there is no surprise that at the exact same moment is the time that when I was at the chamber, we were hearing from CEOs from every size sector, every single one saying, what are we doing on childcare, right? So I don't think there's any shock that like we had this moment, and that moment is still sort of running a fever pitch. But in terms of hard costs, it's pretty clear. Like, we've got data out on a national scale that says that this is a $122 billion problem. $122 billion. On a local side, you're looking at states like Texas that are about $10 billion in lost tax revenue. Think about that as a state. If somebody from the budget office is here, if you're recouping $10 billion as a state in lost tax revenue because your businesses can't perform or they cannot hire or they cannot, that's a huge number. You called out Shannon called out $3.8 billion in Ohio, right? Like, every state has a story to tell here, and there are real numbers associated with the losses that are incurred because we cannot, we do not have the system in place, right? And I would also say there are numbers incurred by business because they can't, right? Like, it's a both and. That's $10 billion in Texas that, that the state isn't recouping. It's hundreds of millions of dollars that businesses are not able to take on because they don't have the staff, they don't have the workforce, or the retention problems that they're experiencing because of all the things that, we have touched on already.
Exactly. I mean, is this working? No? Is this one working? Yes. Perfect. Thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself. That $122 billion, to put that into perspective, that is $15 billion more than Target made in 2023. So that's massive on a national scale. When we start talking about at a state level, if we are talking about not just the lost productivity, but actually the impact of getting those 100,000 more employees into the workforce and the reduction in absenteeism and all of that, you're pushing that $3.8 billion number to more like $9 billion in increased GDP for the state of Ohio. That would be like having another key corporation in the state. That's significant. And if we're talking about at the individual level, not just what we all experienced during the pandemic with our own children and all of those challenges, but 40% of parents today are in debt as a result of childcare. 55% are going into debt. In the state of Ohio, only about 8% of families can afford to have an infant and a toddler in childcare at the same time. It's not just about childcare deserts, which, by the way, are defined as having 3 or more children for every one open spot or every one spot that exists. It's not just about that. It's about whether or not that childcare is available at the times you need. So when we start thinking about the impact overall, if you are a 24-hour workforce, hospitals, factories, there's plenty, how are you going to get childcare overnight? You take that desert number and it's like everywhere. There's so few. Even if you don't need it overnight, if you're a company that expects your employees to be there at 7 a.m., you need childcare to start at 6. And if you expect people to leave at 7 p.m., you need childcare to go until 8 p.m. We had a show of hands about how many people had kids. Let's think about the summer when school's not in session. Those day camps, what time do they end? 3. I have a pretty flexible job. You know what I can't do? Leave at 2:30 to go get my kid for a 3 p.m. pickup from summer camp. Accessibility is not just about, hey, there's a space at a childcare. It is the space at the right time? And I think there's actually a real role for businesses in that, because businesses can come together and they can advocate to the childcare businesses, and they can even guarantee that roles will be filled. Hey, across all of us, across our 20 businesses, we can guarantee that we'll be able to fill 10 spots at 6 a.m. if you will extend your hours. Businesses are all about supply and demand. If you can guarantee that there's demand, people will be able to supply it.
I think this is, I'm so glad we designed this program the way we did, because this is exactly the conversation that we're going to roll into with our next panel, and really talking about what some of those local resources. But I did want to reiterate what the governor mentioned in his opening comments about there is an opportunity right now in Montgomery County and soon, we hope, across Ohio, to really innovate with, in partnership with businesses. There's some money on the table. You'll hear from Robin Lightcap, who we're working with in Preschool Promise. But if you are a business who is interested in exploring some of these innovations, reach out to us, because ultimately, while we had a great lineup of speakers talk about the urgency of this problem, we don't want this to be a conversation that is just about worshiping the problem. We know it's a problem. We really want it to be a solutions-based conversation today. And so we've got great opportunities on the table. You'll hear some more innovations, but any last words from our speakers as we wrap up? Any final call to action or insights you'd like to share?
I would just say that when it comes to the cost of inaction, like, yes, it's billions of dollars, yes, it's workforce productivity, but there's also a cost to the fabric of the community when childcare is not available. It's either families not moving to a community, it's families being forced to leave a community, or families not being able to contribute to the community in the way that they would like. And so obviously there's a huge dollar sign, and like, I work for the U.S. Chamber Foundation, so that is our wheelhouse. But having grown up in a town of single-digit thousand people, when you lose or don't gain a family specifically because of childcare, there are intangible effects. And I think that between that and the billions of dollars is the biggest reason why this is priority one for so many people.
I would just say that the importance of your voice, the importance of the voices in this room, the importance of the companies in this room, the importance of the small businesses, the foundations, really, truly, every single one of you on and in Capitol Hill right now could not be more important. Making clear that childcare is a priority for you, and a priority for your employees, a priority for your community, is like, this is the moment to go and say, these are the solutions that we are looking for. And it looks like, there are several ways to deal with this crisis, as we talked about, right? I think affordability is one of those ways, but it is a crippling aspect of this juggernaut, and it is something that is uniquely on the table right now. And so use your voice if you can. I cannot express enough how important it is to hear from you right now.
And because we're in Dayton, I'm just going to say that we are particularly encouraged that Dayton Zone, and I think the Dayton Chamber Zone, John Husted, now Senator John Husted, was just assigned to the U.S. Senate Small Business Committee. That committee does a lot of important work around small businesses. They've been leading on childcare and how the SBA can support small businesses, including providers of childcare. And we are really encouraged to have a partner in the senator. So we look forward to continuing this conversation and not only supporting the governor and his efforts, but also what our senators are doing.
It's a great call out. Can all of you join me in thanking our panelists? What a great conversation.
I think I told you at the beginning that the committee had a jam-packed full agenda of great speakers. I mean, wasn't that amazing? Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, panelists. So we don't have any built-in breaks. So if you feel the need to use the facilities or you want to get something else, feel free to do that. But we're going to keep rolling because we have lots of important information to share. And I think, where is Robin? I see her right there. Leading our next panel is Robin Lightcap. And I think most of you know that Robin is the executive director at Preschool Promise, but she also serves on the governor's Early Childhood Advisory Council, and she is the board chair of Groundwork Ohio. She is a child advocate and a change agent who never stops driving strategies that matter for businesses and families and children. So Robin?
Is that on? Yeah, there we go. All right, we're going to get really practical about what do we do about this mammoth problem, and I'm excited for you to meet and hear from each of the people up here. Just to make sure it's really clear, Stephanie was just describing that we at Preschool Promise are currently facilitating a funding opportunity from the State Department of Children and Youth. And this money is available from the state for businesses who invest in a child care solution. And so we are happy to work with you. And as part of that process, thanks to the Chamber, we've talked to lots of businesses and are making lots of connections in our own community here in Montgomery County. And I am really excited for you to hear from Ron Holbrook, who is in corporate affairs at Sugar Creek. I have been incredibly impressed, Ron, about your childcare knowledge and just really about Mr. Richardson and Sugar Creek's commitment to childcare long before all of us were having these conversations. So can you tell us a little bit first about what Sugar Creek is?
Thank you, Robin. Sugar Creek's a food manufacturer headquartered here in Ohio. We're a private, family-owned business. Robin mentioned Mr. Richardson. And his philosophy, a lot of companies talk about people being their biggest priority, but Mr. Richardson truly believes that, and his actions speak as such. Sugar Creek offers a lot of programs for our employees to help remove barriers to work, including temporary housing, transportation, and one of the highlights is childcare. Many years ago, based on all of the things that we've already heard about the needs, he and Sugar Creek recognized that and started first with a on-site childcare in Washington Courthouse, Ohio. We're a food manufacturer. We have 4 plants here in Ohio, 1 in Indiana and 1 in Kansas.
And how many employees?
Just under 3,000 employees nationwide.
Okay, so that gives you a feel for the size. So you have actually multiple strategies in how you're supporting people with childcare. So I think you referenced the on-site childcare. Can you explain how that's currently working at your other 2 locations and then what's happening here in Dayton?
Sure. So our model has been that as a manufacturing company, an operating company producing food, we know how to build and maintain buildings. We had space in the Washington Courthouse, Ohio, which is our original manufacturing plant, and recognized the need for that childcare. So our general model is that we would own and maintain the building, provide that space to a licensed childcare provider. We're not in the childcare business, and they are, but we can maintain the building. We generally then would negotiate with them priority enrollment for our employees, and any remaining spots then are open to the community. So that provides not only just the seats, but then convenience for our employees. That doesn't work for every location. The next location that we opened was at a newly opened plant in Indiana, and there we were able to work through a public-private partnership with the local school system that had some empty rooms because of their declining enrollment that were available in exchange for some seats for the school system employees and a partnership with the local YMCA. We cover the cost of those rooms and have a child care arrangement there. And then, like at our corporate headquarters, we don't have that spot, or there's not as much of a need in terms of there are available seats in the area. So then those employees receive benefits to help offset the costs.
So let's dig into that a little bit more. So, one thing to think about is most businesses are not able to open a child care on site, right? That just is not practical for most of us. Now, you'll hear later from Debbie Feldman, we have some great examples where we do have companies that have done that. But since it doesn't work for everyone, and even when you do have that example, most likely that one child care on site cannot meet the needs of all of your employees. It's just not possible. And people make decisions about childcare based on where they live, who else might be picking up the child, so it's not always going to work. So Ron, I know what you have done is offered something with a dependent care FSA, a flexible spending account. And this is something that some businesses have. It's often not widely utilized amongst employees, but it is a very tangible solution, and it gets at some of the tax benefits we were just discussing in the other panel. So can you explain to us, because you have a really creative way that you are leveraging that dependent care FSA with your employees. How does that work?
So what we've done is we have our benefits provider, Anthem, who manages the dependent care accounts. And any employee who contributes or signs up to contribute to that account receives a company contribution just like we would a 401k or others. So that helps add to, there's a $5,000 limit by the IRS. What it allows them to do is calculate their weekly expenses, have that then withheld from their checks into the account. Sugar Creek then does a quarterly contribution to anyone who participates in that program, and we make that at the beginning of the quarter, so that helps them have that balance that then they can pay before they have to work and earn that ahead of time. But that's been something that's been very beneficial to us to help benefit our employees where we don't have a child care at some of those locations.
Exactly. And, one of the things that Ron and I are exploring is the opportunity to use some of the state funding to help match this investment that Sugar Creek is making in the dependent care FSA. So that's a tangible example of something that we're looking at doing to help people. So, Ron, with Dayton, you also, in addition to the dependent care FSA option, you also have purchased a building. Can you tell us a little bit about your vision here, since we're here in this community?
Sure. I mean, our intention and our vision would be to try to have, and just about every manufacturing plant we have is located in one of those child care deserts that we've talked about, right? And if not a child care desert from an empty seat, definitely the quality and location convenient to the employees and the availability of hours, which is a huge thing, as you just heard in the panel before ours. So first was the Washington Courthouse, Ohio. Next, we were able then to start the process in Indiana. And next would be our location here in Dayton. We've purchased a building that was a former child care that was no longer operating next to our facility in West Dayton on Gettysburg. And we're making plans then to renovate that and be able to offer child care for our employees. The remainder of those available seats then would be open to the community.
Great, thank you. And I just want to hear from you, why is it that you're not trying to run it yourself?
Isn't that obvious? So licensed providers, that's what they do. We're good at taking care of buildings.
And bacon, manufacturing, lots of protein, right? All right, the one thing I want to talk about before we leave the dependent care FSA, you heard Ron mention there is currently a limit from the feds of $5,000, which is pathetic, right? We heard about how much it costs for one child in childcare, and I can tell you, like, for an infant in childcare in our community in a high-quality program, it's $15,000 a year plus for one child. So we all can put our voices together to advocate for a much higher limit on that dependent care FSA. That's one example of how your advocacy voice is important. All right, so we are going to move forward here in the conversation. So we have in our community in Montgomery County 300 licensed child care and preschool providers already in existence. So it is not necessary for a business to go and open their own child care program, and there are lots of reasons why I would advise you against that. That is super complicated to do, like Ron just shared. They're not experts in running day-to-day child care. So one of the things that we can do at Preschool Promise is help you connect. We can do maps of the child care programs around you. And while we're hearing some about child care deserts, in our community, we actually do have a lot of child care providers, and most of them do have space available. So that is not as much of a crunch in our community here in the county, thanks to people like Debbie Lieberman who are here and our city leaders that have invested in things like Preschool Promise over many years. So when you think about all of those licensed child care providers, however, the cost of going to sending your child there is definitely a challenge. And so that's why we're going to move next to Saran in our conversation. And Saran, you have an impressive background in education. You graduated from Harvard and then from the renowned London School of Economics and Political Science. And then you went and started your career at a company we all know, and had an experience that led you to start Mirza. So can you just tell us a little bit about your journey that led you to start Mirza?
Yeah, absolutely. So, mildly embarrassing introduction, and I will just say, as a bit of an economics nerd, we had heard a bunch of stats today. I'm gonna tell you the story of two single moms that really illustrate these stats. So I'm raised by one of those single moms. Immigrant kid, when my family settled in Pittsburgh, my dad left my mom and me. So I grew up with then watching my mom try to figure out how she would, in a foreign language, in a new country, take care of this kid and provide for her. So my mom went to community college at night, worked an hourly job during the day, and I grew up helping her navigate the US social safety net and filling out that school lunch form. By the time I was in high school, my incredible enterprising mother was a bank comptroller. So that is just such an illustration of people need opportunity to work, and we offer these incredible safety net benefits to be a hand up. So fast forward to my time at this company we've all heard of, Uber. I was brought on as an early employee back when we were still going to the JFK parking lot and running after taxis with phones to effectively stop doing that. Eventually, I led a 200+ person hourly support team, really just focused on growing driver supply. Because I was raised by an incredible single mom, I hired a bunch of them. One in particular was an incredible mom of two. We're gonna call her Janice, that is not her name. And I tried to promote Janice twice. So there was a statistic earlier that about a quarter of parents have refused a job opportunity because they couldn't afford the increase in childcare costs. Janice is one of them. She turned down that promotion each time because she would lose access to New York City childcare vouchers. That's devastating. The opportunity I thought I would be able to create for folks, clearly, not really the case. What's worse is finding out that Janice has also taken out loans in the summer when she didn't get her summer care application in time. So we also heard earlier, 40% of parents are in debt over childcare. Janice is one of them. And she's from the South Bronx. That is the poorest congressional district in America. And there's a community bank in the South Bronx that spends 2 weeks every summer processing childcare loans. So many of those families should be accessing childcare benefits, but weren't because knowledge barriers, application barriers, you have separate Head Start, 3K, 4K, New York City childcare vouchers in different places. It's really, really hard. And then when you work a 9 to 5, when are you supposed to get all this done? So that's really how Mirza was born. Out of the frustration with what the status quo is, we're effectively now this one single place where in under 3 minutes, on your phone, in your native language, on the hours that work for you, you can identify what programs you qualify for and then use this to streamline the application process. So folks who use Mirza apply one single time. It takes 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll generate, here are your applications so that you're ready to go. Because I just fundamentally think access to what my mom had and what Janice really could have needed should be available for everyone.
So we are really excited in Montgomery County to be working with Saran and her team to bring Mirza to our community and to figure out how to leverage it with these business partnerships as well. So, Saran, what you're saying is you're trying to make sure that we help employees leverage the state funding that Director Winty and her team have in place for people who are working. And you are helping make that a little bit easier for them to navigate some of the application process. Can you give us an example of how you are doing this with other businesses across the country?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with one of the largest employers in New York City, so the United Federation of Teachers, which represents about over 100,000 public school educators. We work with them to offer our product. We've helped screen those educators for which benefits they qualify for, so they can pull us up on a mobile web browser and then really quickly identify the breadth of programs that are relevant for them. So instead of the dozen or more that you would need to navigate and find on your own, it's one single place, really quick. And we're in English and Spanish and Mandarin and Tagalog and Haitian Creole, and making sure that that access is also really as easy as possible. And from there, we make sure that folks then can really quickly and easily apply across these programs.
And you're also helping, so the first thing is to make sure we're pulling down available funding from the state. And thanks to the governor and Director Winty's team, we do have more funding available than we used to help people hire. And so there are people out there right now, like Saran was saying, who could qualify for help and they don't realize it. So the first thing is trying to find those folks, make sure that they know that this money is available. But for those who don't qualify, you're also working with businesses. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yep, absolutely. So first is really just implementing our system to identify how do we help folks tap into the funds that are out there for them that have already, as Governor DeWine cited, really helped move the needle and allow folks to work more. 85% being able to increase their hours is pretty stunning. And then from there, we can then identify across the employee base who is not supported by these direct subsidy programs. From there, help the companies build out very specifically what is that representation of employees, how much can they spend, what would then a subsidy program that the employer layers on top need to cost, and how would it work, and be able to then effectively help channel those funds across.
Great, thank you, Saran. All right, so we're gonna move to Olivia next. And thank goodness we have a lot of super smart people who are solving the childcare problem, because Olivia, you graduated from Harvard and then you went on to Stanford and got not only 1 degree, but 2 degrees, right? A law degree and an MBA. And you started this company that's called Patch Caregiving. So tell us about your journey that led you to start Patch.
Sure, you are really embarrassing us.
That is not,
This is the faulty one. Okay, can you hear me? I was gonna say you're really embarrassing us here today, but thank you. Yeah, I mean, my journey started with my mother, who ran a toddler center, so I've been around the world of childcare for quite a long time. But like you mentioned, we started Patch when we were grad students at Stanford. It was the peak of the COVID pandemic, which we've heard a little bit about today. And we realized that there were some childcare benefits out there, more for the 9-to-5 working parent or the remote worker, but very little out there for the front line, who was all over the headlines then. So we actually started Patch by partnering with large employers of frontline working parents, from UPS to Gap to hospitals, and actually just talking to parents. So we spoke with thousands of frontline working parents all across the country in warehouses, plants, fulfillment centers, distribution centers, hospitals. Learned a ton. I would say the number one thing we learned is the vast majority of these frontline working parents tend to rely on friends or family as their primary form of childcare, which makes a ton of sense when you think about where they work, when they work, budgets, trust and safety preferences, and it's wonderful across all of those dimensions. The number one pain point we heard from parents was the once, twice a month when grandma's not feeling so well, or my sister's car broke down, I don't have a backup plan, and I'm forced to call out of work. And it was really that connection between childcare disruptions and call-outs that made us go back to business leaders and kind of say, how are you seeing this show up? very much like opening a floodgate. They all told us the same thing, which was kind of, yeah, we know it's a problem. We see it in absenteeism, we see it in attrition, but the child care benefits on the market actually don't make any sense for our workforce, which we've heard a little bit about today. When you think about traditional on-site child care, as we've heard, it costs millions of dollars, it takes years to roll out, and it can't serve really large workforces. When you think about traditional backup care, often they don't have networks where these parents are working or when these parents are working, or they don't accept last-minute bookings. So we really started Patch with the simple premise, which was, okay, if you were to just focus on backup care, which was the complaint we heard from parents, for this employer and for this type of employee, what would it look like? And that was really how we started.
Great, and I think just to bring this to light a little bit more, some people aren't eligible for help paying for childcare, but they don't make enough money to afford paying for it. So they end up with the friend, family, neighbor is what we call it in the childcare world. Myself, I was fortunate, I have 3 children and I had different childcare like every year. I always felt like if I could have childcare stay in place for 1 year, I was lucky. Like it's just, it's constantly changing. But one of those, I was fortunate to have my parents help with my youngest especially. But anytime they were sick or they were going to travel or they were going to do something else, I was in trouble and I was panicking and going to care.com trying to find a backup childcare. So what Olivia is talking about makes it possible for people that have solved childcare in a different way, but still then need help and are the ones who are calling off at the last minute, get help. So help us make it come to life a little bit more. Like let's walk through what you did at UPS in a real specific way.
Totally. So taking a step back, we are an on-site or a near-site backup childcare benefit. When I say that, I mean we are truly retrofitting space, whether it is an office space, a conference room, an old clinic space. This room is probably too big for us, but you show us a space, we've probably retrofitted at this point. If there are any manufacturers in the room, we also do near-site. We retrofit these spaces to be care spaces, which look very much like kindergarten classrooms. We staff those spaces with caregivers who are all Patch employees during the hours of the employer's choosing, which for us truly means all hours we've done, and I can go into that. We provide our partners with analytics and insights. All of this is to say, for a parent with a Patch site where they work, next time grandma's not feeling so well, you book a spot with us, you bring your child with you to work, drop them off in the Patch room, work your shift, and pick your kid up when you're done. For our employer partners like UPS and Intel and hospital groups, what this means is we're bringing them the efficacy of on-site care, but at a fraction of the cost in a really speedy timeline. I won't go too into the weeds on what this looks like, but a couple of things, which is that because we are just focused on backup care, we actually do not need many spots to be able to serve large workforces. So a typical Patch program has room for up to 5 kids a day, and we're serving shifts of well over 1,000. UPS is an amazing example of this. So we're with UPS all across the country, including in Ohio and Columbus. In that building, there are over 2,500 employees. Our Patch program has room for up to 5 kids a day. We're serving them very meaningfully. And I will just say, I know we've heard this a lot, which is businesses don't have the appetite often to sort of run a childcare center as a side hustle, which makes total sense. And we really do every part of our operation. So we are retrofitting that space on site. We are handling all the regulatory approvals. We are staffing with our caregivers. We are handling all of the advertising, all the enrollment, all of the parent communications. Truly, all our employer partners do is tell us which facility you want this in. Tell us what hours you want. That truly could be 24/7, as Intel told us we can do it. Tell us the hours, tell us the building, we'll be there, and we will handle the rest.
You're making it easy, in other words.
Hopefully,
yes.
as easy
yes,
as
very,
can be.
very easy. It's not intended to be their primary childcare solution, so we still have to tackle that with the other things we're talking about, but it is a really tangible way to provide backup emergency care. So thank you, Olivia. All right, Charles. Now we get to talk with you. You lead the Center for Policy and Research at the Kentucky Chamber, and you earned your PhD in history in government, I know, and you have a lot of experience in helping drive policy that's going to support businesses. So as we heard earlier, you have become an expert in this child care policy space. So tell us a little bit more about what your role is at the Chamber, first of all.
one of the nice things about doing a PhD program in history is that you have to learn how to be pretty good at a whole bunch of different things, but not really all that great at a really specific thing. And so that's been helpful, because in my role at the Kentucky Chamber Center for Policy and Research, we work on a whole bunch of different issues, all of which are entirely driven by our members. So I might have my own research interest, but I'm really going to be focused on things that we're hearing about from our members. In response to something Aaron, my good friend Aaron, was saying earlier about me, being a child care expert or not, I am not. I am the furthest thing from it. I am much more comfortable dealing with very thorny sales tax issues or unemployment insurance. Sometimes when I go to work on workers' comp these days, I get really excited about it because it's so straightforward in comparison to this issue, because this is such a complicated issue in so many ways, and the public policy solutions, they're somewhat limited, and we're all trying to be really creative in that space. But we at the Kentucky Chamber have really dived into this issue. Last year, our board of directors met for a summer retreat to plan the Chamber's 3-year strategic plan. It was fascinating to see one business leader after another step up and say, we have to make the issue of increasing access to affordable, high-quality childcare one of our top 5 biggest priorities. And that's something that they did, which is a really significant moment, and that also indicates we're going to be working on that a lot more. One of the reasons we're so interested in this issue, as we've already talked about, is really the workforce perspective of this. From our perspective, if you can increase access to affordable, high-quality childcare, you kind of get a 1-2 punch when it comes to addressing workforce challenges, because you're helping parents be able to participate in the labor market, and then you're also helping get those kids that will be joining the labor market sometime later in their lives or start new businesses. You're giving them that great head start. So it's a really a high value proposal when you think about it from that perspective. In Kentucky, I talk about workforce challenges in lots of different states, and I know it's a challenge facing every state. Every community is dealing with this, but I always like to tell people what we're dealing with in Kentucky is probably worse than what you're dealing with. As an example of that, this state here, Ohio, has a prime age labor force participation rate of almost 74%. Almost 84%. In Kentucky, it's 79.2. That represents roughly about 300,000 adults, prime age individuals who are not in the labor market. And that makes it really, really hard to hire. It also creates a lot more government dependence, all these types of issues that we're all trying to work with. So we've really leaned into that issue, and we're exploring a whole range of different innovative solutions to try to increase access to high quality, affordable childcare.
So something passed a couple years ago, right, in the Kentucky legislature to help with this. Can you tell us what you've learned and what you have seen as you've tried to implement this in Kentucky that will help us here in Ohio?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that we're all seeing is in the absence of significant federal intervention in this space, you're seeing states innovate. Kentucky put itself on the map in particular when we made child care workers categorically eligible for subsidy. And if you're from a state that has not done that yet, that is low-hanging fruit. I highly recommend that you go do that. In Kentucky, we have about 3,500 child care workers that are currently benefiting from that program right now, where they receive free child care simply because they're working at a licensed, regulated child care facility. Huge way to attract and retain more talent in that workforce.
We need this in Ohio, by the way.
If you need any motivation to do that, you can just tell policymakers in Ohio, Kentucky is doing it. Why aren't we doing it? Another thing, though, that we've tried in Kentucky, and this ties in with a lot of the themes we've been talking about on this panel, is a program that we've created called the Employee Child Care Assistance Partnership. Quick note on the title of that program. When we were drafting the legislation for this, we wanted to put a placeholder in for the name of it, and we just forgot to change it. And so here we are a few years later, and now it's the Employee Child Care Assistance Partnership. We also call it ECCAP. But the idea behind that program is to really go after the affordability challenges for non-subsidy eligible families. So in Kentucky, families making up to 85% of state median income, they qualify for our low-income subsidy program. If you are above that income threshold, though, there's really not much support that you get. There's things like the Federal Child Independent Care Tax Credit Program. We have a very small state-level program that mirrors that. But there's not a whole lot of support. So you go from this significant subsidy to suddenly having, a 10,000 plus benefit cliff. And so we really wanted to try to figure out a way to focus in on those families. And we're doing this in an environment where there's a tremendous amount of skepticism about this problem in itself. And there's also significant budgetary constraints and other policy priorities that crowd it out. And so we landed on what is essentially a tri-share model, where you have an employer who would contribute some amount of dollars to go towards an employee's childcare costs. The state would step in and match that, and then the employee would cover whatever might be the remainder. And we found that when you get that to work and the stars really to align, you can cut those out-of-pocket childcare expenses for a working family in half. You can cut them by a third. It kind of just depends on how much is being contributed. And so we think that's a good way to help go about addressing this affordability crisis. Now, there's other challenges such as capacity and quality that we have to be focused on, but that affordability challenge is a particularly important one. We've learned a lot. That program officially launched in July of 2023, and it ran through a pilot phase into June 2024. I can tell you a couple things that I would really highlight on here, and a lot of this also, I think, stresses the importance of the work that Saran is doing with MRSA. You have to make this easy. I can't stress that enough. And so from an administrative perspective, when you think about what employers would have to go through to participate in any program that you're creating that involve employer participation, you need to make it easy. Because we were hearing about earlier on this panel, employers are doing a whole lot of other stuff. They're trying to do the core functionality of their business, and then when you tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, we would also like you to address these really complicated childcare challenges, you're gonna have to make it as easy as possible. And so flexibility is another key part of that. There are some other tri-share models operating throughout the country. Some of them are pretty rigid, but making it flexible, I think it was great to hear the governor talk about this program in particular being more flexible. And then a third thing I would throw out is oftentimes we create these new programs and we just have this assumption that, okay, we created this really great program. I bet everybody's going to rush to it and they're going to hear about it. You have to shout it from the rooftops. These types of programs, from my perspective, require dedicated recruitment strategies. So you have to not think about it from a marketing standpoint. You need to recruit. And the benefit to doing that is if you can get a lot of proof of concept, if you can get a lot of maybe large, big name employers that are doing these things, that's a really great way to kind of spread awareness of these programs and the benefits that they can provide. So we're learning a lot. We still think there's a lot of viability in this type of model to help non-subsidy eligible families afford childcare. But we're happy to share what we're learning, and we are continuing to iterate, and we anticipate more changes coming to this program in Kentucky within the next couple of years.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you for already informing us, and thank you to Director Winty and the Governor for making this next phase of the Child Care Business Partnership more flexible. We do have a lot of flexibility, so if you have creative ideas about how we can do this, come see us and we'll help you connect with the state funds. That brings me to Kim, our Senior VP at 4C for Children. 4C has been a critical partner in everything we've done at Preschool Promise from the very beginning. And we are grateful to have your perspective. You do this work every day, have done this work every day since the beginning of time, if you will. So tell us a little bit more about how 4C for Children operates and how they could help businesses who are here today.
All right, thanks, Robin, and good morning, everyone. Before I start into that, I want to say that 30 years ago, I came into this field of early childhood because of free child care. So we really do need to take Kentucky as an example, because myself and many others that I know, that's why we're in this field, is because we had free child care, fell in love with it, and we never stayed. And here I am 30 years later. So 4C for Children is one of 7 nonprofit organizations across the state, many of them that are represented here today, that is contracted by the Department of Children and Youth to serve families, child care providers, and the community as what we call a child care resource and referral, or a CCR&R. CCR&Rs do many great and innovative things, but I'm going to focus on 2 things that I feel are of the most interest to the business community here today. And the first that we've talked about a lot is the supply of child care. We know that we have lost child care slots here locally and across the state and across the country. And one thing that is as a CCR&R system that we do is we help with the supply of child care by helping new child care programs become licensed. In the past year, 4C has helped over 70 new child care providers become licensed here in the 15 counties that we serve, which includes the Miami Valley and Southwest Ohio. That's nearly 1,000 new additional child care seats. which can help your employees. In addition to that, and to helping the newly licensed, we also work with the currently licensed to ensure that they're providing safe, healthy, and educationally sound programs to the families that they serve. We do this by supporting and training the child care teachers and administrators, because we know learning does not start in kindergarten, nor does it start in preschool. Birth to age 3 is when the architecture of the brain is constructed. And if we don't get that right, we're going to be paying for it for the rest of their lives. And it takes nurturing, knowledgeable, and engaging adults at all ages of a child's life to ensure that they, as Governor DeWine said earlier, reach their full potential and are successful in the rest of their lives. So helping with that supply and helping with the quality of care that's provided is one thing that a CCR&R does. The other thing that's probably of most interest to employers here today is we help families find childcare. Your local CCR&Rs have the most up-to-date list of licensed child care providers, center-based and our family child care providers that provide care in their home. And that's because of our relationship and our contract with the Department of Children and Youth, who supply us with that information on a regular basis. So we use that information in an interactive child care search. So if a family is able to independently look for child care, they can go to our websites at their local CCR&R. They can plug in the age of the child that they're looking for care, what hours that they need care, or the preferred location, and they can get a list of providers, and then they can call those providers and see if they have care available. But for a lot of the families that we serve, they aren't able to do that. They don't have the time to do that. They don't understand how to do that. Or they're in crisis mode. And so they can call us. And a lot of those families are those that we've talked about that serve non-traditional, that they have non-traditional hours that they work. So they're working second shift, or they're working on the weekend, or they have a child with special needs, or maybe they need help with transportation or other resources. Or we get those calls from those low-income families who that mom or dad, they got a job and they need to start next week, or they need to start tomorrow, and they need help finding childcare. So we have childcare referral specialists who will take their information right there in that moment, enter it into our database, and we're able to get that list for them. But that's not all. Then we turn around and we do vacancy checks. That means that we call each of those child care providers to ensure that they have available care at that moment for those families. Because it doesn't do a family in stress any good to give them a list of licensed child care and they start calling that list and the child care provider says, nope, sorry, I don't have care available. Nope, I don't have care. About the second or third call, they're gonna give up. So we take that burden off of them. So the list that they get, they know at that moment that care is available. Also, we help them understand, what does quality care mean? Because that importance of, once again, that engaged, nurturing, knowledgeable adult and that quality piece, because the brain is being developed. We cannot forget the quality. Yes, affordability is absolutely important, but quality, because that will depend on our future workforce, on how they turn out. They need that quality piece. And so we're able to help those families find care, as well as help them connect to ways to pay for child care. So if they qualify for state assistance, also known as publicly funded child care, we can help them connect to those resources, or local initiatives like Preschool Promise here in Montgomery County. And we do that for free. For the families, it's free to the families, and it's free to the child care provider. They don't have to pay us to be a part of the database, because the Department of Children and Youth are funding us to do that work.
Thank you, Kim. I think one of the best parts is you actually have live human beings that can talk to a family, right? It's not
Yes.
just an online search or leave a message, but your employees can call and actually talk with somebody who is empathetic and will listen to what the specifics are that their family needs and help them find a right spot. So thank you for that.
Yes.
We are going to go really fast. I have one question for each of you to answer in 60 seconds or less. So we're going to start with you, Ron. So Sugar Creek obviously is a leader in this space. You're not only providing on-site childcare at multiple locations, but also doing the dependent care FSA. But I also know from talking with you and your team that it's actually a pretty relatively small percentage of your employees that actually participate in that benefit. So my question is, why are you prioritizing it? Why is this so important to you all?
Well, like I mentioned before, we have the benefit of being a privately owned family business that can contribute to the communities where we work in ways that they're not necessarily mathematical ROI. I think Aaron mentioned about the fabric of the community. Others mentioned and Mr. Richardson says many times, I don't care what the problem is, many times he'll just say it takes a village, right? So three largest manufacturing facilities are in communities where if we're not the largest employer, we're one of a small handful. And our manufacturing facility in Dayton, we're not the largest employer in Dayton, but our local community of West Dayton, we're definitely one of the largest economic impact employers in that area. Places that need love. And while a lot of our employees may not be participating, we know we're impacting the fabric of that community, to steal Aaron's words. I really love that. And making it a better place for our employees to want to live, and helps our employee retention and makes it a better place.
I remember you also saying that other employees, even if they don't have young children, that they were like, hey, we care, that you care about all of us, and that my colleagues have care too. So it builds a culture within your community of workers at your place too. All right, so Saran, real fast, how would you summarize the benefits that Mirza will bring to employers?
All right, we're gonna go with some stats. Sharon had said earlier, more than 60% of women with young kids who are not working full-time want to but can't afford childcare. Here's what happens when we've worked with over 10,000 folks in New York City. More than 40% of our users within 5 months have been able to increase their household income by up to 40%. So half of those folks have been able to have a partner return to work entirely. The other half, many of whom are single parents, have been able to increase their own hours at work. That is really powerful. And so when you combine that with opportunities like Kentucky's CCAP and Ohio's Child Care Business Partnership, that is an even broader swath of folks who are above that income cutoff for direct federal, public benefits, who can then also seize that opportunity.
Thank you, Saran. Olivia, real fast.
Okay.
2 quick stats.
Oh man, hard to choose. I will say headline, every single one of our customers has seen that this benefit has more than paid for itself in a matter of months. A couple of really quick stats from UPS. The parents who are enrolled in our program turned over at a rate that was 90% less than their peers, same shift, same building, same time period. 80% of bookings with us are made under 48 hours in advance. We are really helping parents on days they otherwise do not have other options. And finally, I know this is 3, my favorite stat, every single parent who has ever tried a patch program across any of our customers has come back. So I think that really speaks to the trust and safety we built.
Charles, quick sentence of advice for businesses that are thinking about doing something with this.
One of the things that I think stops a lot of businesses from getting engaged in this space is they will quickly remember that they will have a lot of employees that don't have young children and that might not necessarily benefit from a child care benefit. And so where we've seen businesses be most successful is when they have these more blended efforts. And so where they're including something like the Employee Child Care Assistance Partnership alongside something like a DCFSA or another type of benefit that helps people and their employees deal with their other types of care needs. And so I think that's a really smart way to go about solving that problem. is you have to kind of keep in mind that you're going to have some employees that are dealing with these childcare challenges, but you have other employees that might be dealing with another type of challenge. Try to blend that package together. We've seen several employers in Kentucky do that, and those are the ones that we see are being most successful.
Thank you, Charles. Kim, what do you think is going to happen if businesses start helping people pay for childcare?
Well, definitely, since we know that 5 out of 10 employees, they, lose hours of work based on the fact of childcare. You will definitely see an increase in your employees and the available employees. And I just have to say before we end, let's not forget quality and unintended consequences. So if anyone's thinking about starting a child care program in your business, please reach out to your local CCR&R, because we can kind of help think through so that you don't take another child care program out of business that's already there. You want to utilize what's there, and so let's think about solutions.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone. Come see us if you want to access the state funding.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you to all the panelists. I hope you can see this isn't your average educational event. Our committee has worked really hard to bring in the best and the brightest minds to make sure we're having deep conversations and discussions about the different solutions. So since we haven't had any breaks, can I just ask everybody to stand up? Yeah. All right, now just give it a little shake. All right. We are going to keep rolling. We're going to let our AV folks change out the microphones. And in the meantime, I'm going to introduce, now you can all be seated again. See, I could have been a kindergarten teacher. Except for, can you see this? Nobody listens to me. No one. All right, everybody, let's sit back down. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, now I'm excited to introduce my friend and one of the most amazing leaders in our region, Sue Edwards. I think you all know that Sue is our host today here at Wright State University. And, Sue joined Wright State in 2018 and became the president in 2020. And the thing I love about President Edwards is the minute she took a leadership position, she started driving results in recruitment, retention, financial stability, all while doing so with maintaining excellence in the classroom. And all of those things are so hard, and we are so grateful to have you in this region. So I'm going to let you introduce your panelists.
Thank you, Vicki. It's so great to see so many people here today, so thank you very much for being here. I have the privilege of hosting a panel that is associated with the largest employer in the state. The largest employer in the state we share a fence with. It is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I think one of the things that, we know about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I'm sure we're going to hear it wasn't as simple as we think it was how they serve their employees. And that really extends to childcare and the commitment to childcare and the support really from Representative Turner, Congressman Turner, as they have developed their childcare strategy. So it's my pleasure to introduce today Linda Smith, who is the Director of Policy at the Buffett Early Childhood Institute, which is at the University of Nebraska, and Linda has a very close connection to the establishment of childcare with the Department of Defence, and also Donna Blackburn. Donna is the Chief Child and Youth Services individual that's associated with the 88th Air Force Wing. So welcome to you both, and so thank you for welcoming them. Linda, we're going to start with you. Can you please give us an overview of how the military system actually works? And I like the point that you sort of pointed out, the myth versus the reality. And why did the military, in fact, take action related to childcare as it did?
Well, I want to start by just, taking on this issue of myth versus reality, because I think the program is often misunderstood. First of all, why we did it, and then exactly some of the things that I think that the public believes happened that make it inconsequential for other people to use the lessons that we learned. My own history was I started working with the Air Force many years ago. Going from the base level. And I want to say the first thing that I think was important about that experience, among many things, was, and I tell people this because this is what the military understood decades ago. I was actually I ran the child care program at that time on a training base for the Air Force. I was the second person called when the base went on alert. Base commander got a call from headquarters, we went on alert, and he called me in the middle of the night. The military knew decades ago that these people weren't going to work without child care, and I think that's something that people don't quite get always. If you are an employer, the impact that child care has on people's showing up for work, their ability to do it. Something that came up, and I want to footnote this a minute, that came up just now, and Charles brought it up about Kentucky. And the situation that if you're an employer, the problems that you might face with people who don't get a benefit from child care. In the military, I think the military understood very early, we did at the base I was at, everybody wins when people have child care, because if the person working on the flight line and on the airplanes can't go to work because they don't have child care, everybody suffers. So somebody's going to pick that work up. And so the military, we never had that debate over should we all get it, because the single airman knew that if he was going to pick up the slack if the married guy couldn't come because he had child care problem. Okay, so I think that's one thing. But getting to the myths, the first myth I want to just say, there's a perception, well, DOD had all that money, so it was easy. We passed a law in 1989, and Congress told us to get it real clear, 36 things. It was a completely unfunded mandate. We got no money. Now, hearken back to 1989, and we were in the biggest drawdown in the history of the department since World War II, because the wall had come down. And so we were throwing people out of the military, and we in child care were saying, hey, wait a minute, you've got to hire child care people. It was not easy. So my point being is it was an unfunded mandate. And to this day, if you look for the budget of the military child care program, you will not see it in the congressional lines, because the budget is a bottom-up build in the military. So it's up to the base to budget for what happens in her programs. It doesn't come down from the top. There's no magic about it. So it really is going to the budget table along with every other function in DOD and fighting for the money. And so if you think it's easy, think again. It was very hard during those days. And it's a point that I want to make along the way about why the military system worked, and I'll say that later. But I had to go to the budget table. By the time this all happened, I was working at the Secretary of Defense's office. And we were charged with implementing the Military Child Care Act. I had to go to the budget table with the admirals and the generals and say, I want you to give me money, defend the child care budget as it came up from the bases, along with steaming ships, which I didn't know what that was until then, flying airplanes, training, the whole 9 yards. So it had to compete. And how did it compete is one of the issues. I'm trying to make this short. Okay?
No, you're doing great.
Was we had to know, we were asked the question all the time, okay, how much do you need and what's it going to cost? Now, I would say to a lot of people in this room, we don't know the answer to that as a nation yet for child care. You have to get the data and you have to figure it out. We had that, and I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, the second myth, and I hope you laugh out loud at this, because everybody says, well, you were at the Secretary of Defense's office. It's a top-down organization. You can just tell them what to do. Anybody, a military in here that would love to have the SecDef's office come down and tell you what to do on your base? It doesn't happen that way. So we had to work very hard at making some of this make sense to people. And I would also say that a lot of what happens in childcare necessarily doesn't make sense to people. Okay, the next one, the standards they have the gold standard. The standards for the military are the gold standard of the country. Guess what, people? When we developed the military standards, we picked the median of the state standards at that time. And they haven't changed significantly since we wrote the first standards for the military. So they weren't gold standards, but what they were was enforced. And there was a high level of accountability in the military system and a checks and balances on the inspections of the program. So, another myth. And then the other thing that I wanted to note was that there is and was a difference between law and policy. And I think that we had a law, and I think we had 36 or 37 requirements we had to implement. But we also made some good policy decisions at that time. And the policy decision, one thing I think is worth people noting, and we were talking about this, I was talking about this in a situation yesterday. The one thing, and I heard the governor talk about it here, the one thing we decided in the Defense Department was that we were not going to, with our DOD dollars, pay for a child to be in bad child care. And so the Military Child Care Act itself really only addressed the centers. They had been the problem that we had. But we decided this was a Secretary of Defense decision, that the standards had to apply to every program within the military. Because if we left out family child care, all the families would just want centers. Or if we didn't take care of the Part Day pre-K, or if we didn't do the after-school program. So we did it all. It was a policy decision, not a law decision. So those are the myths, if you will. Now, I will take just a hot second to say what it looks like.
Go for it.
Okay. So I think one of the things, and I will tell you that I think everything the military did is applicable to a state and a civilian community if you just think about the principles behind what we did. So the first thing is that this was one of the things we were told to do, is that child care had to be a shared responsibility between the Defense Department, i.e. the public, and parents. So we were told essentially that we needed a 50-50 partnership. Now, I'm not going to say what Ohio's partnership needs to be, but you need to figure out what is Ohio's commitment to this, as well as business. And you heard somebody talk about the tri-share model. In Michigan, they're trying to figure out that. I mean, there's 3 partners in Michigan: businesses, the state, and parents. So that model is looking at a 30-30-30 type. But the principle is the same, and that's what my point is trying to be with you. So the match of public to private or to parent dollars was critical, and how that went in is even more important. And I stress this to you as you struggle to figure out how do we fund all this. Because the one thing about the military system was the money that the Defense Department, i.e. the Air Force here, right, Pat, puts in, goes into the programs, and it buys down the cost of care for parents. It does not, and I know we have a parent choice issue in this country, but stabilizing the money going into the program was fundamental to us being able to fix it. You can't ask these programs to do more and more and more and higher quality and pay people more when you don't have stable funding, folks. And the stability of the money was as important as the amount of the money, okay? So second critical piece was the workforce. And this country ad nauseum has this debate, and I'm sorry I have to say it, but it annoys me. is it a degree or is it training? Is it who gets what? And I'm sitting there going, you know, the military system was built on, we put our degrees into her. We started with the management of the programs, with directors, trainers, lead teachers. We went down with the education and we came up with competency-based training, and that got us to, I just heard a couple months ago, I think the military has had over 200,000 of its workers over the years since then get a CDA. So we went for competence in the workforce and education in the management, and the two came together. I think they came together nicely. When we started this work, we had 22,000 military people working in military childcare, and I can tell you, we'd have never gotten away with just firing them and say we're going to go hire a bunch of degreed teachers. We had to figure out how to train them, and I would challenge Ohio to do the same thing. You've got a workforce. How do you move it up? Not replace it. Okay, we couldn't do that. So, so that was the standards in DOD. As I said, they were middle of the median for the states, but we also saw them as the floor. Then we set a goal in DOD of all programs being nationally accredited. We were required by Congress to accredit 50 of them, of about 900 at the time. We set a goal, we got to 50, we set a goal of accreditation. So licensing, DOD certification, minimum accreditation goal. We got to 100% nationally accredited programs in about 5 years. When I left the department, every program in the military had been nationally accredited, as opposed to about 5% nationally at the time. But having the clear goal, here's where you are, here's where you're going, and here's how you get there, and here's the workforce is critical, okay? So I'll just say a couple more things, I'm almost done here. So we also distinguish between demand and supply. And this is one of the nice things about the militaries we have, and I know you just got a new MILCON, right? The military funds its supply in a different funding stream than its operations. So the MILCON is the way we build, I say you, I'm not there anymore, but we built programs. So we had a separate way to figure out the supply problem. And it didn't mean, that the parents had to pay for it, because guess what? If the parents had to pay for the building, then guess what goes up? The costs. And so guess what? Then the parents can't afford it. Okay? So that's pretty much how the system works. And I think all these things do apply to the civilian sector.
I think I think it goes to show that even if you're with the federal government, there are challenges in facing these questions because they're incredibly complex. So, I think as we sort of transition to you, Donna, you've had a lot of growth on the base. And I think one of the things that I've heard through today's conversation has been accessibility, affordability, quality, and flexibility. And so as we sort of look at Wright-Patterson and how it's implemented childcare on the base, what are the lessons learned along the way regarding that need for flexibility to delivery, and how important, and I know it's very important as a parent, that experience and how it relates to the quality of the program versus the cost of a program?
Well, I would say that because we have the Military Child Care Act, it's not really an option to not have quality programs. And so we have to be realistic, set our goals on making sure that we hire competent, trained, and educated managers. And then when we come to our teachers, we really want anyone who has joy for children, and we will support them through their education, through tuition assistance, and we also have a 12 to 18-month training program that ensures that everyone across the whole Air Force is providing the same quality of care. And it's nice that we have the government support to have our buildings, but we have challenges as well. My wait list currently at Wright-Pat is over 400 children. And that's one of the reasons through observation, inspections, and surveys that we realized we needed more programs. And now we're in the process of building 2 programs that will double our capacity, but it's going to take 2 to 4 years to build those programs. So the alternative that they have now is families that can't get care on base can enter a subsidy program that will help pay for their quality care off base. And I say quality care because generally for subsidy, you need to be going to an accredited program. So we want you to go to a program that can support you until you can get on base, but we understand that with only offering close to 500 children care right now, there's no way we can support the workforce that we have. So we think of little things along the way. We do a lot of observation and assessment, and we just make sure that if we need something, we ask. And so I would say as an individual business, even though we work for the Air Force, I know each base that I've been stationed at, and I have worked for the Marine Corps, the Army, and the Air Force, I go to the base commander right away. And when they're like, well, what do you need? I'm like, well, how much money do you have? And I usually will say, you know, give me an hour and I'll make you a list. And every meeting I see with them, I'm telling them the things that I need, and I'm hoping that they can help me find it. And of course, we have resources in our services center in Texas that can help us, but the reality of it is that each base is its own small little community. And we have the same challenges as you do with getting employees to come to work and stay. And we have, in the last 2 years, I think it is, we started offering free childcare to some of our providers, and we still can't hire enough people to serve the families that need it. So I think pulling together as a community and kind of pooling your resources is the biggest solution to making sure that everyone's needs are met.
I think, you know, one of the things that we've talked a lot about is challenge. It's a challenge. And I think it's a shared challenge. And I think that's the call to, you know, action you're going to hear about is how do we work together as a community to solve some of these problems. You know, and as we look at that, and you've both implemented programs in a number of areas, a number of states, you know, as we look to implement programs similar perhaps to the basis for what is happening at Wright-Patterson, what are the lessons learned, and what do you think are similarities that we could draw from to be successful in this endeavor?
I would say the biggest lesson learned, if you're deciding to build a child care program or add a program to your building, is please get someone who knows early childhood. Get someone who knows the programs, knows the guidelines. As I can tell you, we have programs across the Air Force that we didn't have the subject matter expert there at the time, and it held up opening the programs. You need to make sure you meet all those fire standards, safety standards, health guidelines, and it's not just opening a room and saying, we're gonna put 20 children in here. We have a lot of standards we have to follow, so your easiest bet is gonna be to bring in a subject matter expert in the beginning. And that person is there to work with your finance person to make sure you get the things that you need. But I think that has probably been the biggest challenge for us, and also understand that getting the workforce on board with background checks and training takes time, so you've gotta prepare for that time where you're gonna be having staff there working, but not necessarily taking in an income.
Linda, you raised a really important point. I know in this room, I've seen many of you, we have HR professionals in this room that are going back and going to report to their CEOs. And I think really the conversation that you had was, you know, how do I have, you know, our generals see the true value of what childcare can do? And data is really important. And I'm sure that's how you won your arguments.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what would you suggest to those individuals here that are they're here representing their companies, but are going back to start these conversations in their businesses so that they can move the needle within their organizations?
Well, I think some of it is, and I want to just take this to a little bit higher level if I can, because I do think that what we need is back to the shared responsibility. And I think businesses need to figure out and think about what their role is in the solution. Now, I think that a lot of, and we've heard a lot of businesses providing it, and I think that's great. We heard also about small businesses who are never going to be able to open a child care center or do much with that. So how do we bring the business community to the table in a way that gets us a solution here? And I think it's not just big, it's all businesses, big and small, need to come to the table, including the military people in a community, because they are part of that. So I think that we really need the partnership, if I can stress that enough, with the business people, and they can go back and say, you know, how can you as a businessman come to the table and lend your voice to the problem? We know what the problem is here. We just do. We don't have enough and it costs too much. How much simpler can it, you know, the issue be? So what is your solution? And I think that's important. I did, when you asked that question in the correspondence, I went back and I sort of thought about this in terms of the challenges. And I want to highlight a few things that I think are worth you thinking about as a state and as a community. First of all, I think that what we've been trying to do over time is what I call a one-shot solution. We think, oh, here's the problem, we'll fix it, but then the problem pops out over here, because when you only raise the pay of the workforce, the costs go up and parents can't afford it. So how do you begin to look comprehensively at the problem in front of us? And I say that because if you keep a one-shot solution, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing for the last 30 or 40 years. And, you know, that's, to me, pretty clear. So my advice to you is to figure out sort of what's your goal, and then begin to think about incremental change. And be willing to understand that, yeah, maybe we all want degreed teachers in early childhood. You know, who can fault somebody wanting to have that? But are we going to have that anytime soon? And what are the interim steps that will get us there? Look at what the military did in terms of the CDA credential and the training program that she talked about. How can you build incrementally into your system and get the workforce to what she described? You can do that as a state. So I'd say that's something to think about. The data, you guys have, now I will say, Kara, single out Kara on this one. Ohio has some of the best data in the country. You do. You know what your problems are. You know more about the issue than I think most states. Use it and begin. Okay, you're not going to get to 100%, but how can we increase by 10%? I think you have to figure out, and this is the hard pill. Everybody, I get to leave here, so you could shoot me if you want to, but I'm going to walk out the door and go home. Guys, it's going to take some public investment in this. And, you know, there's no getting around it. You can only squeeze the balloon so many ways before they pop out. It pops out somewhere else. And in order to pay the workforce, not the highest wage, but a decent wage for the work they do, we have to figure out that there is a shared responsibility, and it's going to require public investment. Now, I know the business community doesn't want to hear that, because guess what it might mean? It might mean some kind of a public tax of some kind, okay? But you can't get there with the business model of childcare without it. You just can't. So DOD, we did 50-50. I'm not saying you do that, but what is the public investment? And then how do you get the investment into the programs? Back to my point, okay? Because putting it only into vouchers does not buy you permanency of programs. I think that the other thing that we need is also, as I said, a supply side strategy. And so how are you going to increase the supply? And I suggest that there has to, again, there are a lot of states looking right now at public money going into some kind of facility initiative to help with this. Nebraska, where I work now, has increased by putting money into rural parts of the state, which, by the way, is a big deal, increased the number of childcare slots in small rural communities by over 2,000 in the last couple of years. But they intentionally went after rural and helped communities figure out how they could get facilities in these small places. And so you heard good ideas on the panel before.
You know, I see JP Nassif sitting over here on my right-hand side, so it's my time to get a plug in here. I do think that one of the things we have to think about is how many people are choosing actually not to have children because they can't afford the childcare. That in itself is also a workforce issue because 18 years down the track, we do not have a workforce. And, you know, Jobs Ohio is all about workforce and bringing great new partnerships to our region. So, you know, there is a compounding problem associated with this workforce issue, and it is going to impact every single business sitting in this room. So, to that point, Donna, you know, what key things from a provider point of view when working with your parents, do you see, because it's not just a one-stop shop, it's not, we just need full-time childcare. You have to have some range and flexibility. Do you want to talk about that range and flexibility?
We have to make sure that we can offer the flexibility for that employee that doesn't work full-time. So you need to have things like backup care, hourly care, family child care. And these options allow parents to still work and have that fulfillment, but also have their children in a social environment that's appropriate for them. And I think that one of the things we need to keep in mind is, as many of you have mentioned, not everybody can afford $15,000 a year for childcare. So that's why I appreciate the military programs, and I have 4 children of my own, so I was very excited when I got into military care because they have a program that we evaluate every year to make sure the fees will support the programs, but they're on a sliding scale. So we had to change the mindset a little bit. I would have people on the top of the scale upset because they might have to pay more, and I would just remind them to not think about the rest of the program, think about what they're doing for their child who needs this early education so that they can someday have a job as good as theirs. And I would always remind people that early childhood is a huge investment that people don't think about, but it should really be at the top priority of your budget. And I've had to have some hard conversations with providers and parents about, I know you think you can't afford childcare, but you smoke 2 packs a day. So sometimes you just have to bring it down to their level and make them understand the importance and what the investment means, because children who don't have early childhood experiences don't always do as well when they get to school age. And then there's this cycle of if they get an awesome teacher who encourages and nurtures them, they become great. But if they get a teacher who's just there to get her paycheck and she's not very happy either, those people don't turn out to be productive citizens in the community. So we need to really push that ECE is where your child builds confidence, problem-solving skills, and is there really a cost for that? Or is it priceless?
Great words, great words. And I'll end there, but I will say, as somebody who has the privilege of educating students in the college environment, where they start and how they develop is critically important to their future success. So I want to thank you both for being here today, and I'll hand it back to you, Vicki.
Thank you, President Edwards, for helping us with that. And may I say thank you to Linda and Donna. And when Donna said we got to find people who have a joy for children and train them, that made my day. Thank you. Because we know we have a child care workforce issue, and so that is something we definitely need to address. But today, our last panel is led by somebody we all know and love, JP Nassif, who's one of our hometown leaders, and he serves as the president and CEO of Jobs Ohio. Now, we know that under JP's leadership, they have soared. We've heard about Intel. We know here in the Dayton community about Honda and LG in Fayette County. We know about Joby Aviation at the Dayton Airport, and we just heard about Anduril in Pickaway County, which is 4,000 more jobs. So JP, you and your team are doing amazing work, and so we're excited to have you lead our next panel. And joining JP is Michelle Williams-Vaden, who's the Executive Director of the SEMI Foundation. And Michelle, I think you came from Florida. Where is she? Oh, did you come all the way from Florida? God love your soul. Okay. Well, we appreciate you being here, and she is really instrumental in advancing workforce development and fostering growth in the semiconductor industry. And so we're excited that she's focused on the talent pipeline that meets the needs of that critical sector. So together, JP and Michelle represent an extraordinary partnership dedicated to propelling Ohio in the forefront of innovation. So thank you both.
Good morning.
Hello.
It's very nice to meet you in person.
You as well.
And I appreciate that very friendly introduction, Vicki. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to join this summit. You know, there are certain initiatives which are very important, and it can be challenging to amass the team, the group of collaborators required to publicly advocate, to get the policy required. But it takes good leadership, and I want to make sure I thank Shannon and Sue, Barbara, and the whole team for really, you know, when they ask, I say yes, and then I ask what was the question. So we are here. I want to make sure I thank the Chamber, Chris and the Chamber, Groundwork Ohio, Preschool Promise, Sue and Wright State University for your leadership. The title for this session is The CHIPS Act, Why the Semiconductor Industry is Talking About Childcare. The semiconductor industry is experiencing significant and historic growth. I think many of you may know this. It's a very cyclical industry. It's very difficult to time the cycles, but looking at nearly every prediction of where the market's growing, anywhere between 7 and 10% year-over-year growth, really fueled now by advanced air mobility, electrification of automobiles, and everything else. AI will power data centers and the semiconductors required for that, and of course national security needs, which are becoming more and more evident. So the industry is going to grow, and it's going to grow here in Ohio, and we need to have the workforce for it. And Intel is just the start. We're going to build out the entire Silicon Heartland, and what that means, it means Intel, their competitors, their supply chain, and something even more important that ties to the great work being done at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is the most advanced applications of the semiconductor to defend against our adversaries are researched and acquired through the Air Force Research Lab in Wright-Pat. And that whole ecosystem is going to be built right here. And just like the Apollo program 40 or 50 years ago fueled the growth of the Silicon Valley, what became the Silicon Valley, the same thing is going to happen here in Ohio. And that's going to be the Silicon Heartland. It won't just be a name or a slogan attached to Intel and Intel's supply chain. It will be the entire future ecosystem. So it really is an exciting time. So the work you're doing here that's going to help open up the aperture for the workforce it's critical. With all these opportunities, there's a challenge to building that skilled workforce. Ohio is projecting. We did a study in 2018, before I showed up at Jobs Ohio, that showed that we would need an additional 540 members of the skilled technical workforce. That was before Intel, before Honda LG, before Joby Aviation, before Anduril, and what will be a massive pipeline of additional companies. This is a national and challenge for the Western world, and I would place my bet on Ohio. We work together, we collaborate, we will solve these challenges. But even if we did nothing else other than what's happening right now with the great work and leadership from our Governor Mike DeWine, and the state of Ohio, we will still have a shortage of 370,000 skilled technical workers to address these challenges by the middle of the next decade. So we need to deploy every possible strategy, and one of these critical strategies is to make sure that Ohioans that are here, that want to be in the workforce, that have challenges for entering the workforce, are able to do that. And to do that while continuing to advance Ohio's brand and promise. And that brand and promise is that you can have a great balance in Ohio. You don't have to sacrifice your family and your community for your career or your business investment. You can do all of those things here. That's important to what makes Ohio, Ohio, and frankly, it's important to a great life, and that's why we all love living here. My personal story, I came here, like many families, with an Air Force family in the late 70s. My father served. When a member serves, the whole family serves. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and so many people say my mother got the looks and the brains in the family, and my sister got those, and my dad and I had what was left. But she stayed at home and took care of the kids. My father went to the base and traveled TDY, was deployed to Vietnam and deployed many different locations. And to have a solution that would have allowed her to still stay connected with the family and also explore and contribute to the economy, who knows what amazing things could have happened. So this is personally exciting, I think, for me, and with my current job at Jobs Ohio, knowing that we have such a large gap, and we need to deliver on that promise. So today, I'm happy to be joined by Michelle Williams-Vaden, the Executive Director of the SEMI Foundation, whose organization is laser-focused on workforce development in the semiconductor industry, and I am excited to interview her as the subject matter expert as we unpack why the semiconductor industry is talking about childcare and what's at stake for Ohio's economy, and how businesses, government, and communities can collaborate to create innovative solutions. So with that, welcome. Let's have at it. First, Michelle, what is the mission of the SEMI Foundation, and how are you involved with childcare?
Sure, thank you so much. So the SEMI Foundation is the 501c3 arm of SEMI, and SEMI is the global trade association for the semiconductor and microelectronics industry worldwide. SEMI does a lot of different programs, a lot of research. Of course, SEMI sets the standards for the industry, and the foundation was started about 25 years ago with this laser focus on workforce development and broadening the talent pipeline. So, you know, that is the focus of our work, and we do a lot of different things around industry awareness, K through 12 engagement. We work with a lot of members of the military community and many, many other programs. We started to get involved in childcare when the CHIPS Act came out and mandated that companies applying for more than $150 million had childcare plans, and they strongly encouraged all applications to have childcare plans. The SEMI Foundation is also not a childcare organization. We work with experts who are, so I just want to be really clear on that. But we took it on because it is such a critical workforce strategy, and I personally took it on and have become deeply involved in it because I am a parent who decided to have 2 children instead of buying a home. When I first had my children, we were living in California, which I loved and miss, but we were never going to be able to buy a home and have children. So, you know, some of the conversations that have been here today, so many of us have lived them, right? And I have as well. And also, as I started to understand and peel back the onion of the challenges in the child care spectrum, I just knew that the SEMI Foundation and I personally really wanted to get involved in that. So we started entering these conversations as the SEMI Foundation largely when the semiconductor companies started coming to us about their entire workforce development plans for their CHIPS application, because they were supposed to develop equity strategies, workforce plans, and childcare plans, and they didn't necessarily know how to do everything that the government was asking them. So we started to provide consulting expertise essentially to semiconductors, large and small. We've worked with all the names that you've heard of and many that you haven't to help them develop their workforce plans. And when they came back to us about the childcare strategies, we said we can absolutely be a helper in that, but we don't do it ourselves. So then we started engaging with other companies that and firms and policy groups that did work in childcare, and that's where our partnership came to be.
You know, you don't have to make the choice of that house if you come to Ohio.
Thanks.
At least most places in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the CHIPS Act and the semiconductor industry, because this impacts multiple sectors, but what specifically has the CHIPS Act or is the CHIPS Act trying to implement regarding child care that caught your attention?
Sure. I think it's actually what so much has been talked about here today, the CHIPS Act asked companies to develop child care plans that were community-based, that helped increase the supply within communities as opposed to just creating one-off plans that benefited their companies alone. And that kind of community-based work is not necessarily a strength of many of our semiconductor companies. And the organizations that I've run before coming to the Semi Foundation were very community-based. So we know what that takes, and we know that it's all relationship based, and you know the importance of building institutions of trust and creating a space where it becomes a collaborative solution. So you know there's a lot of specifics in the act itself that I won't dive into, but it really was about how do we create stronger child care systems and solutions as opposed to how do we fill the void for these X amount of workers that you have.
So we talked a little bit about the broad skilled technical workforce projected deficit in Ohio. Can you talk a little bit about the semiconductor workforce deficit specifically and the impact the child care issue has on that?
Absolutely. Well, first, let me give you a little bit of information about the semiconductor industry in Ohio, which is there are at least 137 semiconductor companies or affiliated companies within this great state. There has been $28 billion of private investments announced since the CHIPS Act. There are currently more than 9,000 semiconductor-related jobs. There's been a 189% increase in semiconductor jobs since 2018, and 11,000 students graduate each year from Ohio-based universities and colleges with semiconductor-related degrees. So even before the Intels of the world and all these other enormous investments, it's a really powerful industry here, and this is a very important state to our ecosystem. Right now, OMA and the Ohio Association of Community Colleges are researching the gaps between the workforce numbers needed and the education that's currently being provided for those jobs. So that, and we're involved in that, so that really, they talked about how the Ohio has fantastic data, and it's because, you know, organizations like this are coming together to really understand the problem. So I know that, you know, the very conservative estimates nationwide are that we need 67,000 new workers in the industry just in the next couple of years. But that's just with the very directly related semiconductor, not the multiplier effect of all the other businesses that are related. So the need is huge, and as you say, this industry touches virtually every industry. It enables everything, you know, all the other technologies. And what's really interesting about it, you know, for a technology that has such a profound effect in our lives, we're actually a very invisible industry when we're up against, you know, social media and search engines and gaming. You know, you ask any kid, I don't have my phone with me, you have any kid, you know, what their phone does, and they can tell you things that certainly I don't understand at this point, but very few of them understand what enables that technology. They don't know that there are chips inside their phone. So part of our job is not just connecting all of these dots, but making these careers and these opportunities aware to a wide swath of Americans.
So in Ohio, we pride ourselves in our ability and our effectiveness in how we partner and collaborate. This is an example just with the various groups and jurisdictions and entities that are here today. Can you give us some more insight on who you're partnering with for this work and what approach you're taking to those partnerships?
Absolutely. So our main child care partner is a firm called Policy Equity Group. You may have heard of them. They are a DC-based consulting firm, and they work on policy. They work with within communities, with solution providers, with government agencies, and a wide swath of different child care-focused organizations to do exactly what we're talking about, to strengthen local systems and to create plans that meet community need. They're really an extraordinary group of people, and I've learned so much working with them, and they take employers through a 4-step process. The first thing they do is so much of this was talked about earlier, they really figure out what are the employee needs, how far are they driving, where are they coming from, where do they need care, closer to home, closer to work, do they need drop-in care, that sort of thing. And they also look at the local capacity at the very micro community level. They next identify available supports. So in some states, it's a tri-share model. In others, there are subsidies that workers may be eligible for, that they could take advantage of. They then explore the different kinds of potential benefits that those companies, given all that information, can provide. And then they help create the child care plans for those companies that are rooted in community and rooted in supporting the local systems, not just the companies as one-offs. And Policy Equity Group works with, all sorts of national providers and also, really locally based, community-based organizations. So we feel really lucky to be in this work with them.
So all of us are dealing with this issue in one way or another. Either we have children and we're managing that through our own personal lives, or in our case, we have a company with employees all over the state, and we deal with these. I mean, every week we're dealing with this issue. Can you share a little bit of how Intel deals with this as a large company, and then maybe some best practices from some other companies and how they're dealing with this issue?
Sure. I will talk. I'm not from Intel, so I will say, so I can officially opine on their policies. What I can say is that the CHIPS dollars, companies typically are working with intermediaries to do the workforce solutions and even the child care solutions through the CHIPS investments. The SEMI Foundation, working with Policy Equity Group, Intel chose us to be their child care intermediary. So that means the dollars that they are hopefully still being funded by the federal government, and that's a whole thing right now, but means that those dollars, Policy Equity Group, SEMI Foundation, and all of our local partners are going to be able to decide how to best leverage those dollars to strengthen child care systems. Right now, Intel has a current child care plan that involves vouchers for their workers, a negotiated discount on some national providers, and a few other things. But what we've been able to do is educate Intel on the fact that vouchers are great, but if there's no supply, they're useless. Various other challenges around sort of these more blanket solutions. It's great that they're focused on it. It's great that they provide something. But what's important is understanding the community need, the worker need, and creating solutions that really make a difference. I will also say that because these investments are still so new for so many of these companies, many of them are just in the research phase. But someone mentioned before on one of the panels that when you get the larger companies' leadership in something, the others fall in line and start doing the same. We are really seeing that in the semiconductor industry, and so that's an extraordinary strength that we can leverage. For instance, we are now working with companies like TSMC and Amkor who are building new facilities and are starting, before they've even made the plans, to think about childcare, which is a huge win because then they can build resources from the ground up. I know we were going to talk about challenges in a minute, but I'm going to dip into there briefly, and none of this is going to be a surprise, but there's a lot of concern about these giant corporations sucking out all available slots, right? And then there's also the challenges around, shift care and the fact that fabs run 24/7, so it's not drop-in care that some of these people need on outside hours, it is continual care in very, off hours. So the fact that a lot of these companies are now thinking about this before they even break ground, I think is a really extraordinary piece of the puzzle.
So what are the biggest barriers that you're seeing, and and just follow that with where you see opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest one has both sides of a barrier and opportunity, and that is, I think until now, there wasn't any large concerted effort for this particular industry to be talking to childcare and to try to understand the childcare industry or needs, and that the childcare industry doesn't really understand the semiconductor industry to some degree. And I say that, I'm part of a giant childcare network of folks who've been coming together to meet about this. And about a year and a half ago, I went to DC for one of their inaugural meetings, and I was the only person representing industry in the room. And they were talking, this is back when there was this hope that the CHIPS industry could help transform childcare, and we now know that the CHIPS Act can have an effect in childcare, if not completely transform it. But they were talking about all these different things that industry could and should do, and all of these movements that needed to happen without industry in the room. And it's just like any other practice of solutions have to be created by the people who are going to be, affected by them. And so I was the first time they'd had an industry voice in the room. And I'm like, y'all, this is too much data for industry. Like, you just need to come to them with 3 bullets and a solution, because they are drinking out of fire hoses. They've got 1,000 things to worry about. So, we need to come to industry as a solution provider, just generally, not as you need to be doing this or you should be doing this, or with any shame and blame. It has to be a partnership-driven approach. And then conversely, as we talk to semiconductor companies and try to help them with these childcare plans, so many of them, this is just so foreign to them. They didn't, there are bright lights within this, right? There are companies who are doing extraordinary work, but so many of the people we are working with, we start talking to them about what it means to create affordable, accessible, quality childcare, and they just haven't. It's just beyond their realm of expertise. But the willingness, right? We're finally in these conversations. So the challenge is this communication hasn't happened before. The opportunity is that it's happening now. And the biggest names, inspired by the CHIPS Act, are now in the process of shifting this whole industry to really focus on this and really understand, because you have to find the message that resonates with your audience, that this is a business solution. This is going to drive profits. This is going to make shareholders happy, and at the same time, why we come to work every day is we're creating economic opportunity for workers who otherwise would not have access to it. So it's a win-win, and I think, the whole system is starting to understand that.
Michelle, thank you very much. Would you like to share anything else with the group? Obviously, this will be an ongoing conversation on an important topic. Anything else you'd like to share with the group before we close out our session?
Sure. I'm at mwilliams@semi.org. I would love to talk to anybody. We're going to be working and are working in this state through Intel and other investments. We've got some private investments to support childcare here as well for the semiconductor industry. We are, all about community and all about creating stronger systems. So please get in touch if we can be of service to any of you, and if there's ways that you feel like we could collaborate, because we're all in to help solve this.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And I can say, this is an important issue that's going to require very strong and powerful advocacy and collaboration. And we have here in Ohio the 8th most economically diverse state. Ohio is on the rise. We're in the top 5 for every leading economic indicator. This would be a great place for you to locate those efforts, and we invite you to move your company right here to Ohio. So thank you very much for your time today, and thank you all for the opportunity.
JP, I love the way you sell this state. Thank you so much. We know it's a great place to live and work. And Michelle, thank you so much for all of those insights. I think a lot of people don't realize what the CHIP Act means for us in other ways. It's not just about the jobs. So thank you very much. So now you may be thinking to yourself, how do you and your organization further engage and actually do something? Well, here to help us think more deeply about that are 2 leaders who are leading in this lane and committing to advancing positive outcomes for children and youth. Lynn Gutierrez is the president and CEO for Groundwork Ohio. Where'd she go? Oh, there she is. Hi, Lynn. and a new mom. Well, a new mom again. There, how's that? And she's on a mission for Ohio to become the best place for children to thrive. She and her team are fierce advocates for policies that will ensure every child in Ohio has the opportunity to be healthy and ready to learn. And following Lynn Ann is my friend and a leader we all know, Debbie Feldman. And Debbie has been leading on these issues in this region her entire career. And now she's serving as the president and CEO for Dayton Children's Hospital. And for the past 13 years, she has brought a new vision that has led to a strategic transformation for the organization. And it's now ranked as one of the premier children's hospitals in the country. Yeah. And she and her team are driving incredible results every day in all aspects of children's health. And so we're grateful to have these two amazing leaders to lead us into what we do next. Lynn Ann?
Good morning. My name is Lynn Gutierrez. I'm the president and CEO at Groundwork Ohio. And just a reminder about who Groundwork is, we are the early childhood advocacy organization in the state. So we are talking every day at the State House with policymakers in your community and across the state to increase investments in access to high quality, affordable childcare. As we start to close out our program, I just want to thank you very much to the Dayton Chamber, to Wright State University, and to the governor for joining us today. As an advocate and leader, and Vicki mentioned, mom of 3 on my first full day back from maternity leave. Nothing delights me more to have all of these powerful, brilliant people talking about solutions to the childcare crisis. And not just learning about the solutions, reflecting on the data, but committing to act and advocate and innovate in new and different ways to solve this challenge for families, the workforce, and our state. Every day we talk with working parents, we talk with childcare professionals, business leaders, and every day we seek out those 1 in a million parents across the state who have cut back their work hours as a result of childcare barriers. They're in this community, they're in this room. And we think there's an incredible opportunity with again, the recognition that 60% of women who are currently not in the workforce would return to the workforce to support their family and to grow this economy. We have an incredible opportunity to invest in them, invest in their families, by resolving the childcare crisis. So we are counting on your innovation and advocacy, and you don't have to do it alone. We look forward to continuing to be a partner with you. We are early childhood system and childcare system experts. We want to make connections to you, certainly to the folks on this agenda, the brilliant folks from across the state and the nation today, but continuing to make connections in our community. And we want to continue to both remind you that you don't have to do it alone. We're your partner, and you can't do it alone. We need a strong public investment that is required to solve this crisis. And that's where we spend so much of our time. We hope that with the impending budget and the first information that we'll learn about that on Monday, that we have an opportunity to come together and use our voices to increase access to high quality childcare affordable in this state, in this budget this year, hopefully with the support certainly of the governor and the legislature. So we hope that you will join us in our coalition. You'll be receiving additional materials about joining our coalition to stay in the know, understand where those opportunities are, and continue to partner with us. So thank you very much, and I will hand it over to Debbie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn Ann, and thank you to the entire Groundwork team for your laser focus on the issues that matter most to the most important citizens of our state, and that is our children and their families. This has been an amazing morning. We have heard from so many experts about the gap. The statistics are pretty amazing and scary, because we know how important the workforce is to the future of Ohio. JP and the leaders of our state have been doing an incredible job of bringing employers to us, but we have to have the workforce. And when we hear about the numbers of hours of workers that are not engaged because of this one issue, I hope it really brings us all a pause to say we have to work harder, we have to work together. I know this community works together like no other community, and so if there's a community that can figure this out, I know it is this one. I'm honored to serve as the CEO of Dayton Children's Hospital. Our mission at Dayton Children's is the relentless pursuit of optimal health for every child within our reach. But here's the thing, only about 20% of a child's health is impacted by their health care. Only 20%. So what's impacting the rest of that child's health? And it's the environment they are exposed to, the behaviors of which they're exposed to, and one of those is childcare. Having the access to high-quality childcare is absolutely critical to a child's ability to grow up healthy. And if a child can grow up healthy, they can join the workforce and be productive contributors to their community. So at Dayton Children's, we are proud of our highly skilled and committed workforce of over 4,300 employees. Our employees are our most important investment that we can make, because we know when they are able to contribute to our mission, they are making a difference in the lives of the families and children that come to us every day. And we know that because our families tell us that. So at Dayton Children's, we want to create the most positive work environment we can. We're proud of the fact that Forbes rated us the top employer in Ohio for 2 years in a row. And we know part of creating that environment is the benefits that we provide. We heard that from some of our employers today. The words from the Sugar Creek representative were absolutely inspiring. So at Dayton Children's, we do offer an on-site child care center. It's actually the oldest on-site child care center in the Dayton region. It opened in 1983, way before my time. And we also offer a flexible spending account before the dependent care account was available. And so these are two strategies. But even at Dayton Children's, we need to do more. We need to be hearing, because we know there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to this problem. And I think if I took away anything from today, it was that we have to think broadly, we have to think differently about this. We can't just say, okay, we provided on-site child care, or we have a dependent care solution. What about emergency care, like we heard about from Patch? It's a significant contribution for an employee to have an on-site care center, and we know every employer can't do that. So meeting the needs is complex, but I know we can do it together. And in Montgomery County, I'm proud to say that our county commissioners and our city commissioners have stepped forward to create the Preschool Promise. I have the privilege of serving as the chair of that organization, working with Robin and her team. We've been able to subsidize childcare for over 1,000 people at any given time in this community. So that's 1,000 children that are receiving additional childcare options because our community, our county, and our city have stepped up to provide this. But unfortunately, we can only provide that to a subset of our preschoolers, and we're not able to support our 3-year-olds, our infants, or the after-school or summer care that we heard about today. There is such a huge need to make high-quality care and education for our children more accessible, and it will take all of us working together to do that. So for those Montgomery County businesses that are considering options for childcare partnerships, please reach out to Robin. I know she wants to work with you. There's tremendous flexibility. So please don't think that you have to come with a solution, that there's flexibility and we can work together to make that happen. I'm so excited that we have a governor that puts children first. I can tell you that I work across the country with other children's hospital CEOs, and they constantly are saying to me, what's going on in Ohio? And how do you have a governor that cares so much about kids? And we are proud to say that we do. But we know that the state can't do it alone. We know that we as employers have to think holistically and see how can we be partners. And we heard about some of those partnerships today. And I know I'm personally going to take some of those back, and I hope all of you do as well. Shannon spoke about the coalition, the business coalition. Please join. Please add your voice to this important issue. I cannot wait to see what happens in the next few years on this issue. I really believe we are on the cusp of doing something very different in this country when it comes to childcare, and I know we can make that happen. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for caring about our kids.